This game doesn't have a noteworthy story. It has a standard pay-to-win model, with the usual auto-battle system. Just another generic mobile game that needs no introduction. Yet our boy loves to play it, the reason being, he likes the female characters. Though, he never imagined that he would be sucked into it. He didn't spend much on it. Neither did he do multiple playthrough. He didn't even finish the game once. And the worst part, he didn't even become a playable character, or even an NPC. But he ended up as a background extra, someone who doesn't even have a name. And in this world, his name is Jiama Kong, which translates into Blade Demon. Now while taking the subway, he brushes shoulder with a girl, who quickly takes his attention. He quickly apologizes to her, who does the same thing back, and thankfully, Blessing of the Miracle is set in Korea. All the places are same, just slightly altered. Because of which, he didn't have much problem adjusting to this world. And like that, a year went by, and he has been living as an ordinary teenager, something he couldn't get to do in his past life. He almost forgot that it was a game world, until he received something. As soon as he steps into his home, he is greeted by his parents with the acceptance letter to Joaquin Academy. Giamma complains that they have brought it up enough times already, but they shower him with compliment that they feel proud of him every single time and raised a wonderful son. But regardless, they inform him about his admission day, which is tomorrow, and asks him to pack his things, which he reluctantly agrees to do. With that, his modest dream of an ordinary life gets shattered. In his room, he sulks about going to the academy, and is unable to find a way out of this. He tried asking many times if he could just not go, but his parents weren't having it. And so, he finds it a big pain, and while looking at the picture, he tells the old Giamma that it's his fault. Questioning him, how did he even manage to get accepted into such prestigious school? It all went something like this. Giamma apparently unlocked his blessing before our boy took over his body, and took the entrance exam to the academy and passed just like that. Which causes the current Giamma to wonder if the past owner of his body a genius. Blessings, they are something like special powers humans wield. Basically like the game skills, though not all humans possess them. They are mostly genetic, having it can define one's status, separating nobles from commoners, the rich from the poor. And with this social divide, the institution that was established to uphold the influence of the elite was Joaquin Academy. It was originally founded with the goals of training the heroes. It's long been an exclusive for only prestigious families. It was only recent that a special admission scheme was introduced, which is how Giamma Kong was accepted into the academy. One might wonder, why would they need heroes? And the answer is simple. There is a demon king here. But to Giamma, an academy which trains heroes for war feels like getting enlisted for mandatory military service again. Just as he thinks about the blessings, his own status page opens up, which is something he still cannot get used to. He checks upon the blessing that Giamma got, which is something that relieves all pain for 30 seconds. Giamma is surprised that he got accepted with this, since it only has a 30-second duration with 12-hour cooldown. But there is another one, which he got when he took over this body, which is the blessing of the Blade God, and his name means Blade Demon as well. He don't remember ever coming across such blessing in the game, and for such a grand name, he finds the description to be plain, / and it shall be cut, which is way too simple. But what was ever more weird for him was the activation condition, a blade 12 inches in length and 2 inches in width, which can only be a sashimi knife. He wonders if they are expecting him to cut fish in this life as well, and decides to just forget about it and thinks about packing his stuff. He then suddenly remembers that he don't have a weapon. He recalls from the game that even the weakest armaments went for tens of millions, and average C rank were in the 100 millions while A and S rank being priceless. And since the tuition being already too high, and he don't want to spend his own money for admission for a school that he don't want to attend. But he knows that if he were to show up unprepared when it's a listen-required item, he is bound to make a terrible first impression. And so, he decides to head to the dollar store in the end for a weapon. The words of his teacher starts to cloud his mind, the same one who insisted on using only Japanese-made sashimi knife, which costing over $1 million. And the words were, a true master never blamed their tools. Fast forward, and he is at school already, and immediately gets called out for his weapon. And he confirms with the instructor once again that it's indeed his weapon. It's apparently the armament inspection day, and the instructor is left speechless already. Recalling dealing with nobles who thinks it's funny to pull pranks, and decides that it's essential he instills discipline from the beginning. He lashes out at Jiyama for thinking of the academy as a joke and showing up with sashimi knife for the class placement exam. But Jiyama still insists that this is his armament. And as the instructor shouts at him again, Jiyama tells him that he is a special entrant from an ordinary family. The tuition was already hard on him, so he didn't want to burden his parents by asking them to buy an expensive weapon, since it would make him a terrible son. And noting his nameplate color, the instructor realizes that he is indeed a special entrant, and finds his story to be completely true based on that, and starts to get angry at himself for letting his own prejudice lead him to scold a boy who was only being a thoughtful son. It is also why there was a sale tag of 30% off on them. Jiyama speaks up again to tell the instructor one more thing, and expresses his belief that only weak blame their tools, leaving the instructor quite shocked. He notes that these aren't the words one would hear from an adolescent boy. They carry the weight of experience of someone who has reached the pinnacle of their field, as he finds Jiyama's tenacity to be incredible. He starts to get teary from all this, and calls Jiyama goated. He also acknowledges Jiyama's armament, which he thanks him for. Other students doesn't seem to like Jiyama very much since he is a special entrant and calls him a lowly thing. But the instructor tells everyone to silence and to proceed quietly once their inspection is done, as he can be either a devil or angel depending on their behavior, hearing which, Jiyama feels as if he is back at the boot camp. A bit later, and he finally gets some rest while sitting on a bench outside, feeling really dreadful too. Though he still made it past the inspection and skipped the entrance ceremony, so all that is left is now class placement exam. But regardless, seeing the scene in front of him, he never imagined that he would come here, the school that he would be attending for the next 3 years. Seeing it in person is much different vibe from the phone screen. To him, it almost feels like a small city. He does find it really impressive. But attending a school is something of a big leap from his past life, where he had to drop out of school because of family troubles. Suddenly, an announcement is made that the class placement examination will begin soon, and new students are to assemble at the training grounds by 1 p.m. He finds the time quite early, noting that the exam is going to be really important. And so, he plans to at least try out his new knife beforehand. From which, he remembers that he never used knives since he came to this world. He didn't got a chance, and since he has been using them for 2 decades, he doubts that he lost his edge. And so, he takes it out a bit and starts to inspect it, finding it better than he expected. He pulls it out completely to try and cut a leaf, and we see the knife getting surrounded by an aura along with electricity. Suddenly, his armament activation condition for his blessing of the blade god activates. But both his body and armament grade turns out to be too low, as informed by a red notification. And so, the system starts to apply limitation on it to synchronize with the user. Jiyama is quite surprised that all he did was sheath the knife, yet the blessing was activated. And as soon as the synchronization completes, the system wishes, "May the blessing of the blade god be with him." And like that, an immense amount of power starts to flow from Jiyama's body as he screams in pain. His eyes starts to roll over, the pain gets to the point where he feels like dying. And the next moment, a big flash happens and he seems to have been transported into another dimension. He doesn't understand what is happening and wonders, "What is this?" in complete shock. But when the knife slips from his hand, the dimension around also breaks. And he returns back to normal, noting that the moment he let go of the knife, everything went to normal. But regardless, his head aches a tons. He realizes that his blessing was activated, but his blessing of the blade god was also breaking the world apart, and the rebound from using it really intense as well. Though luckily his other painlessness blessing left him with only mild muscle aches at most. And if this is what will happen every time it activates, then he finds the blessing useless to him. Suddenly, another announcement is made for the new students to gather at the training grounds immediately. And Jiyama decides to pick his knife up at least, since he cannot just leave it lying on the ground, and hopes that it only hurt because it was the first time. He starts to get nervous upon picking it up, and quickly grips it, and his blessing activates again, causing immense pain again. Fast forward, and we are at the training grounds, and see bunch of new students have gathered. We see some nobles talking among themselves on how they had to spend a fortune to get their son to be admitted here, and suddenly, they are surprised to see someone arrive, who turns out to be the Blade Emperor, 7 Stars hero, Siegfried von Nibelung. He is the descendant of Iran Nibelung, who was the prized founding hero, Valor Joachim. As the noble is speaking further, one of them suggests to return to their seat instead, which they do. Meanwhile, Siegfried sighs in disappointment, while we see someone else also arriving. And it's another 7-star sage, Medea Poison, who tells Sieg, "Long time no see. Apparently it's been half a century." But he quickly points out her inappropriate attire for someone who is the director of the academy, but she replies that he cannot blame her for wanting to stay beautiful till the day she dies, and also offers Sieg to make him younger using her blessing, who tells her that she is still immature despite reaching 70. She should realize that true value comes from character. But she starts to chuckle, saying that he haven't changed at all since 50 years ago, and is still a stuck-up geezer, which annoys Siegfried. But regardless, she expresses her astonishment on him showing up here, since he hates being near people like those elitist snobs. She then comments that he must really care about his granddaughter, to which he doesn't say anything. We also see Giamma is here, around everyone who are talking amongst each other, with him wondering if he is the only one with black hair here, not to mention also being a special entrant. It also makes him remember what happened on the time of inspection, when he was called a lowlife. Suddenly, everyone's gazes turns towards one's place, with Giamma being surprised as well. As she walks past by, everyone is left in awe of her, with Giamma noting that she is here. Blade Emperor's granddaughter, Abel von Nibelung. She is the main heroine of this game, and the very reason Giamma spent money on it. Subspace, a distinct plane of existence, created by Valor Joaquin, alongside the Academy. In this realm, wounds and pain are experienced as if they are real, but the physical body remains unharmed. And so, inside the subspace, even the acts of murder is allowed. We see Siegfried and Medea talking about having a battle royal in the subspace, as Medea states subspace battles to be the long-standing tradition of their academy, but she turned it into a battle royale format. Groups will be divided into 10 students each, and ranking is based on who survives the longest, basically a survival game with no restriction and limits. Siegfried puts his concern of nobles having significant advantage in this, but Medea replies that it was all she could manage, since the Academy's largest funding comes from them only. And it was even more difficult for her to even get the special admission scheme approved as well. We switch back to Giamma, who seems to be blushing looking at Abel, finding her drop-dead gorgeous, previously thinking that her beauty was only possible in 2D, but he is proven wrong. He notices everyone trying to get her attention, though he believes he would be doing the same if he didn't know any better. Having played the game, he knows already. She is destined to be the player's lover, in other words, the protagonist of this game. Believing that beautiful people naturally end up with worthy partners, and on top of that, he is a special entrant, so she is even more out of his league, so he plans to stay clear of her and keep a low profile. Peace, order, and safety, these are the principles that he has set for his future. He plans to get through his study and land a peaceful job and live a safe life. Opening the book, he states that being a hero can kiss his ass, since he can barely hold a sashimi knife anyways. He simply plans to leave the world's safety to all of them, while he himself wonders what kind of job he is going to do. An announcement is made for explaining the rules of the class placement exam. The exam is going to be held in a battle royale format. Among the 10 randomly grouped students, the highest scored will be designated as a star, the second and third as dragons, the 4th to 7th as wolves, and the 8th to 10th as ordinaries. These rankings will determine each student's class placement. An individual score will be calculated automatically. Giamma notes that it's the same as it was in the game, and he is aiming for the ordinary class. And so, the subspace is deployed and the exam is commenced, and we see everyone getting sucked into it. Giamma seems calm, as he plans to not even draw his knife if he doesn't have to. Fast forward to some time later, we see many students popping out of the subspace, with Group finishing up their exams, with Group 24 giving first place to Rachel. Group 27 also finishes up with rank 1 going to Ryojo Saki. Group 27 also finishes up. Medea comments that this year, aside from her granddaughter, as well as Kin of the Spear Saint and the Broken Bow, she assumes the outcomes to be set in stone, and noting their timings. She is quite impressed by how quick they are rank 1 going to Ryojo Saki. And Abel pulled a 7-minute timing with a C rank armament as well, with her grandfather stating that she wanted to take the exam fairly. Medea comments she is just like him. Though her score isn't as good as his record, it's still in top 10 in the history. Siegfried finds it natural result for a child of Tihi Nibelung bloodline. Regardless, he plans to take his leave. Medea informs there is one more group left, but Siegfried replies he has no interest in those offspring of the noble swine. And he starts leaving, with both of them saying their goodbyes to each other. Suddenly, everyone feels a chill, with the whole stadium looking to the sky. Medea gets shocked and asks Sieg if he felt that too, who lets out an audible, impossible with a shocking expression. Everyone in the stadium also starts to talk about it, with Siegfried noting that the sensation didn't came from within the auditorium. Suddenly, they hear a sound from up above, and we some slashes appearing in the sky, with Medea and Siegfried looking up in shock. Their mouth is left open from seeing what is happening in front of them, as the subspace itself starts to shatter. From that, two people comes crashing down on the ground. Everyone is confused, seeing how they fell out of the subspace, unlike usual. Another light shines bright in the sky, with Siegfried looking up nervously. And we see it's a sashimi knife dropping from the sky, with Medea quickly calling upon the medics to check on the vital of the students. And we see it's Giamma, who seems to have fallen unconscious. We go back in time a bit, with Giamma commenting behind that the outcome was decided from the start, as we see a guy getting manhandled by someone. Giamma feels that his luck has run out, as he finds himself in the group of nightmares. The Wicked Twins, hailing from the Iron King family, Jun Mao and Shun Mao. While they are gifted, their ruthless cruelty knows no bounds, with Giamma nervously noting them to be toying with their victims for 30 minutes straight, while he assumes they are ignoring him since he looks weak. Shun notes the guy in his hand not giving off any movements and drops him like a doll, calling it boring. They start counting their kills and victims, along with comparing with each other. The guy who was begging for Jun to let go is easily crushed under his feet. Shun complains to Jun for killing 4 by himself, who later points at a girl, saying that he would let him have her, which Shun finds fair enough, while the girl trembles in fear. Seeing this, Giamma gets frustrated, noting that the girl looks rattled and would probably not put up much of a fight. Moving towards her, Shun notes her to be his type, and starts being creepy by saying if he scream is going to be his type too. His creepiness is even commented on by his own brother. But as Shun is about to start tearing her apart, Giamma grabs their attention by calling them out, lashing out of them for going too far even if it's in the subspace, not without feeling anxious himself for jumping in without thinking. Shun didn't even notice him before, and Jun tells him to focus on his nameplate, causing them to realize that he is a lowborn. And so, they smirk and laugh with Shun changing his plan to quickly take care of Giamma first. They plan to rip out his tongue and play with him for a bit, while Giamma sweats nervously. He thinks to use the pain of blessing, but quickly realizes it's not going to be of any use, since they have been torturing their victims for 30 minutes. And just then, his sashimi knives inside his bag starts to give off a bright glow. But he hesitates, knowing what using the blessing of the blade god does to him. Also noting that his motto is already being torn apart. Both the brothers look a bit surprised, as Giamma starts to pull out the sashimi from his bag. Seeing his weapon, they cannot hold their laugh, and mocks him for it. It only turns into pity for him, as Shun plans on finishing him quickly for making him laugh. He leaps up in the air, planning to crush Giamma's head with a single stomp. Giamma is also not backing down, planning to just hold out for 30 seconds, and believes that he might be able to make something happen as he activates his painlessness blessing. He plans to use that blessing to block out the pain from blessing of the blade god. Shun rushes towards him, believing that Giamma cannot do a thing to him, and Giamma knows that if he don't cut him, he would be finished, and he needs to use his knife to cut through that towering mass. And this time, it's not a fish but a person instead. We get a flashback of Giamma asking his mentor if those knives can really cut through people as shown in gangster movies. But his master shouts at him, stating the movies are not real, and not even God could pull that off. But Giamma's blessing tells him one thing, slash, and it shall be cut, and in his eyes, he can see a thin thread, seeing which, he draws his blade. And in an instant, he cuts off Shun's arm, along with the speech bubble. With his blessing wishing once again, may the blessing of God be with him. As we see his eyes glowing bright blue, with Shun's hand drops in front of him like a flopping fish. We now get another flashback, whereas Giamma tries to ask his master for why does gangsters use his sashimi knives, only to throw one at him. He reminds Giamma to address him as Sir, and asks him to repeat his question now, with him recalling that his first teacher was actually a former gang member. To atone for his sins, he cut off one of his hands and opened a sashimi restaurant, vowing to bring joy to others with his knife. He again asks the same question to him, and he replies that it's a ridiculous question. He should know that already. If one is to stab someone with a kitchen knife, the skin would contract around it, making it difficult to pull out. But sashimi knives are narrow, so one can stab and pull them out multiple times. Jiyama question, if can you just cut them like a fish instead? And he replies, that fish is easy to cut because they are laid flat, but he would struggle to cut even a loaf of bread if it was standing upright, though Jiyama tells his boss that perhaps he is not just good enough, since they can easily do that in comics. It angers his boss, who again reminds him to call him sir, and also that not even Blade God could pull that off what he just said. Back to the present, we see everyone's shocked reaction to Shun getting his arm cut off. As it falls off, Shun starts crying from the pain with blood spurting out like a small fountain. Jiyama doesn't give off any reaction and slowly treads towards him, while Shun gets terrified and falls on his ass, begging him to not come closer. He tries to run away, while begging for someone to help him. His brother can only look at him in shock, as Shun cries out his eyes for June to help him. Suddenly, a thin red line appears on his face, with Jiyama behind him, and seemingly cutting his face in half. From Shun's eyes, we see his face being split in two, with his brother watching it all in absolute horror. And Shun's half-face lands on his feet, with his last expression still showing how terrified he was, seeing which, he starts crying out his brother's name. Meanwhile, Jiyama seems to be quietly chuckling to himself, as the girl also watches his changed behavior in shock. June tries to calm himself down, realizing that Shun is not really dead since it's still the subspace. Regardless of that, he still doesn't understand who the hell is Jiyama. His motions seemed awkward as if it was his first time swinging knife at someone. Seeing how Jiyama is breathing heavily from that, he wonders if it was just stroke of luck. But he gets sure of himself that the knife is the problem, and Shun must have lost because he let his guard down. And so, he picks up his brother's armament, puts it on, since their full power is only realized once they are both together. On top of that, he also uses multiple blessings on himself to increase his overall power. He starts to get confident again, telling Jiyama that a lowborn like him could never dream of having such power. And while he don't know where he got his blessing from, but not even an S-rank armament can pierce through his defense. But Jiyama is not listening, and only counts the seconds remaining till his painlessness blessing ends. June tries to attack Jiyama with a big grin, fully confident that he is going to win. But right after a bright flash, June, who was confident in his ability a second ago, is lying down on the ground, pierced by sashimi knives all over. He trembles in fear, while Jiyama is still on his counting, with only 2 seconds remaining. Just as the counting reaches 1, June's eyes also closes with his final breath. And right after that, Jiyama's blessing also ends, leaving him with immense pain. Fast forward, and Jiyama opens his eyes and finds himself in a hospital. He immediately tries to get up, and just then someone also arrives to check up on him. And upon noting that he is awake, he shouts and informs the others. And the people who arrive to meet him are someone he never met before, but he knows who they are. Members of the 7 Stars, the heroes that defeated the 6th Legion commander of the Demon King's army half a century ago. And the current strongest human, Siegfried, and the Academy director Medea, who asks Jiyama, how is he feeling? In shock, Jiyama cannot help but wonder, what are they doing here? Siegfried asks Jiyama for his name, and he introduces himself quickly. Soon after, Siegfried decides to cut to the chase and asks Jiyama, just what has he done? Jiyama remembers the sensation from before. It felt like that it wasn't him, but it without a doubt was. And looking up, he sees Siegfried staring at him straight, and he notes that getting on his bad side of this monster is the last thing he needs. Jiyama replies that even if it was within the subspace, he felt that the twins crossed the line, but he also recognizes that he went overboard and plans to accept any punishment without any complaints. Hearing this all, Siegfried doesn't reply anything back and simply stares at him. Medea intervenes and tells Siegfried to ease up a little, since he is front of a kid. She then gets all up close with Jiyama, telling him that Sieg may look like that, but he is the one who unblocked his acupoints while he was out cold. He is simply being hard-headed. And so, she asks for forgiveness in his stead, but Sieg gets embarrassed by it as he told her to not tell him about it. But Jiyama doesn't understand why the Blade Emperor helped him, as right now, he can feel his body being light as a feather. Medea also tells Giamma that while he was out cold, the faculty reviewed the footage to see what happened. She knows that he threw himself in front of the danger to protect the helpless girl and was like a prince out of a fairy tale, and praises him to a hero, but Sieg stops her, and she gets annoyed saying that she get it. Regardless, she informs Giamma that they are not going to penalize him for his actions during the exam, and honestly those twins only got in because the Mao family buttered up the academy elders, and they decided to drop out anyways. It's something that Giamma is glad to hear, since he won't have to see them around school anymore. And while Giamma is in the middle of thanking them, they inform him about one other thing, that he is the top scorer of this year, and congratulates him for it. Hearing which, Giamma is left absolutely shocked, with his peace, order, and safety motto being already getting destroyed. Fast forward to a bit later, Medea is in her office, and seems to be sighing about something. She has been the director of this academy for 2 decades, but this was her first time seeing something like that. We go back to moments ago, where Giamma declined the top position, with his response shocking both Medea and Siegfried. Unable to believe, Medea tries to ask if he knows what joining the star class means, and assumes that she must have heard him wrong, even if the elders may have their complaints, but the appointment of the top scorer is determined by the subspace itself. Giamma thinks for a bit and again declines the top position. Siegfried also seems a bit surprised, though he doesn't say anything. Back to the present, Medea asks Siegfried if he is that bitter about Giamma being the top scorer instead of his granddaughter, since he must have seen Giamma's video as well, but he sighs and calls her a fool. Since even questioning the subspace is like to question the will of the found hero literally, if the Academy has recognized him as the top scorer, then it's what they will honor. But for him it's something else, thinking that if his techniques were outstanding he would have understood, if his physique was impressive, he would have conceded, if his experience was vast, he would have agreed. Yet instead, his movements themselves embodies a different thing. It's the will to cut. The very essence of cutting itself, something that even Siegfried has been chasing his whole life, mastery of the blade. But he couldn't shake the strange unease when he unlocked his acupoints. His body was soft and untrained, almost as if it bore something that it was never meant to. But this all make him feel competitive, which he finds shocking at his age. And with a boy the same age as his granddaughter no less. Medea speaks up again, commenting how handsome Giamma is, and the way he cut down his enemies and saves a woman in distress, and wonders if he would save her as well if she was 10 years younger. And asks this to Siegfried, who simply stares at her, and replies if she knows what young people call people like her, and she asks to hear it, what do they call people like her? Siegfried puts down his cup, and Medea's heart starts racing in anticipation. And Siegfried clearly spells it out for her, calling her delusional, causing her to get really pissed at him. Fast forward to classes, we see Giamma is in Wolf class. It was apparently the best compromise he could get, as we get to know from the flashback where Medea aggressively objected to him getting placed in ordinary class and finally settled for at least Wolf class. But in exchange she also tells him that she would keep him being the top scorer a secret, noting that if she were to make him an ordinary, then the elders would be even more furious. Giamma's intentions were to finish his studies peacefully in a lower-tier class, away from the relentless competition of the higher tiers. The result is still within his expected range. And upon entering the class, he quickly finds all the students staring at him, and they mainly seems to be staring at his special entrant badge. And soon enough they quickly goes back to talking among themselves, and ignores him. Though Giamma preferred if they haven't even looked his way to begin with. He does realize that it means the director indeed kept him being the top scorer a secret, and introverts like him are meant to stay out of the spotlight anyways, or so he believes. Suddenly, the girl from before arrives, thanking Giamma for helping her before. Though, he doesn't seem to remember anything, and she blushes while reminding him about the test, causing him to finally realize, though he does wonder, why is she being so formal despite being the same age as her, and tells her to not worry about it, since anyone would have done the same. Since it may look like that he was saving her, but in the end, he was only doing it to protect himself, so now he feels like a hypocrite. But regardless, Giamma quickly introduces himself to her. And she also introduces herself as Chloe, with Giamma telling her that it was nice to meet her since it was quite unexpected of them to end up in the same class, and she responds the same. Though, Giamma doesn't remember anyone like that from the game, even though he got so far as the first half, her name still doesn't ring a bell to him. With the second half being mostly fighting demons, so it wouldn't make sense for a new character to be introduced then, so he assumes that she is a background extra like him. He also asks her to keep what happened during the exam a secret, which she agrees to do so. And just as she is about to tell him something else as well, she gets interrupted by the instructor, who tells everyone to get seated, and Giamma tells her to talk later. The instructor introduces himself as Wonbin Lee and congratulates everyone for joining the academy. And for the first day, he tells them all to start with a physical training session and gives them all an hour to get changed and gather at the training grounds. One of the students asks what they would be doing at the training session, and he replies 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats and 10 laps around the training ground. This response gets Giamma to wonder if he is trying to make all the student go bald with his training. Giamma walks up to the instructor to ask him something, though he is surprised to know that the instructor knows his name and plans to get out of the training session somehow. But before he can say anything, he remembers the director telling about Giamma being the top scorer and tells Giamma that the training level must be beneath his level and offers him to join the training with star class for today, as the director has granted special permission for him to attend any class he wishes, causing Giamma to curse the director mentally. And so he laughs it off, saying that he only needed a quick trip to the bathroom and his body was a little stiff, so the training sounds perfect to him, which causes Wobin to praise him for having such spirit. Fast forward a bit later, and we see Giamma panting heavily. And he seems to be lagging behind everyone in terms of his pace. Seeing his pathetic condition, Chloe walks along and asks if he is alright since he doesn't look too good. But he chuckles and replies that he is fine, and Chloe asks, how many laps has he ran by now? He replies, 5 laps around, and asks for hers, since she seems to be coming from pretty far behind. But she replies that she is on her 9th lap, hearing which surprises Giamma, though she tries to cheer him up and motivates him while running full speed ahead herself. Meanwhile, Giamma feels like he is going to die, as he questions, what the hell is she? Fast forward to evening, we switch to an apartment with a bunch of empty water bottles laying on the ground. And it's Giamma's dorm, who is trying to fill up his stomach by drinking water. He is 1 week into the academy and has already hit an unexpected problem. We get a flashback of the academy cafeteria, where Giamma is dying of hunger and finding something to eat. He asks for 1 stir-fried pork, but the lunch lady gives him a sharp glare in return, causing him to notice the meal ticket box and that food isn't free here. But he tells her to get the food ready for him, as he would be right back, though he suddenly notices something. In front of him is the menu of the food along with their prices, which is shocking to him. He is left speechless, seeing how the stir-fried pork is 50,000 won. Back to the present, he is really frustrated from the hunger, as he throws away the water bottle after finishing it up. The prices he saw at that time doesn't make any sense to him, making him even more grumpy than usual. He's also out of money now, and regrets not taking the money that his parents were giving him back then. He has been surviving on the cheapest water they sell at the campus market, and at this point he is even missing the army's free meals. Though, left without a choice, he goes back into the blanket, wishing for a blessing that could make his hunger disappear. Suddenly, his blessing menu pops up, even when he is just thinking about it. But regardless, he still seems content, because his body has made some good progress, as he sees in the mirror. He wonders if it is the result of the Blade Emperor unblocking his acupoints. It is as if his body has evolved into a completely new body. Though, his blessing is still limited to a sashimi knife, but if he keeps at it, he is sure that he would be able to wield a short sword eventually. He looks again at the sashimi knives, and on the admission day, even the thought of holding a knife terrified him, but now he almost feels uneasy without one in his hand, but he don't know if it's him or the side effect of his blessing. He also gets embarrassing because he is feeling proud of himself. Suddenly, someone knocks on his door, as he opens it up to see who it is. And it turns out to be Chloe, who apologizes for disturbing him while he was resting. Giamma wonders, why is she here, and tells her that he was only lying in his bed and asks for her reason for coming here. She replies that she didn't see him at the school canteen for all week, so she was worried that he was unwell. And he replies that he don't really eat food made by others, despite it being the opposite in reality. She fidgets upon hearing that, and Giamma tells her to not worry about it. She again speaks up and asks Giamma if he would like to grab some ingredients and cook dinner together. which he quickly agrees to, without even her finishing her sentence, leaving her quite surprised at first. Giamma gets really excited and asks her to let him cook since he is good at it. Fast forward to some time later. They have already finished eating with Chloe complimenting him on the food, and that he even prepared it really quickly. And all she had before is boiled fish. She never tasted anything like this. We go back to some moments ago where Giamma checked her fridge for ingredients and comments on the abundance of fish in it, to which she replies that she grew up on the seaside, and Giamma also finds it perfect since fish is his specialty. He finds the opportunity to be perfect, since he was itching to use a knife, and cutting some fish might help him clear his head. But the problem for him is the blessing of the blade god as he looks towards the knife nervously. He tries asking her if she got anything longer, since he used knives like these as his armament, so he feels wrong using them for cooking. And quickly enough, Chloe instead brings out her whole katana, asking if this would be okay, seeing which, he finds the kitchen knife the better option. Left without a choice, he decides to end it all in 30 seconds and activates both of his blessings. His eyes glows blue as he remembers being called the best knife master in Korea. And so, he used his blessing of the blade god with his culinary techniques to prepare the fish. Back to the present, it took him 21 seconds to scale, deb one, gut and fillet the sea bream. And calls it the finest masterpiece that he has ever produced, not losing his edge either. Chloe asks him, how is he so good at cooking, and he replies that he used to work part-time at a Japanese restaurant. Though, Chloe doesn't understand what part-time means and Giamma asks if she doesn't know what is it and she apologizes for it. But he tells her to not be while thinking that there is a huge class difference between their social classes. But regardless, Giamma expresses his happiness for Chloe to like his cooking a lot, and she suggests to wash the dishes for him since he cooked for her, which he agrees to let her do. While she is washing the dishes, Giamma stares at the moon, thinking that he couldn't be happier now that he has filled himself up. Suddenly, he hears her shattering the plates, while frantically apologizing for it, with him noting that he used to be like that when he was her age. Suddenly, he sees one of the diary falling over from her desk, and we see that it is her personal diary where she records her daily life. Seeing the bubbly handwriting paired with cute stickers, he finds her just like the other girls at her age and plans to put the diary back. But accidentally, one of the page flips, and he starts to read its content, and it had stuff written about him. Seeing which, he smiles and finds adorable, realizing the reason that she couldn't get herself to talk to him. He continues on flipping the pages, thinking to maybe look a little more inside it. But on the next page, he is greeted by something that he never expected, with pages filled with confession, leaving him completely speechless. And Chloe turns back and sees Giamma looking at her diary and breaks the plate in her hand, while asking him if he saw it. Hero families slay demons to gain glory and earn society's admiration, solidifying their positions of power. But in an inflated hierarchy, there will be always those who abuse their authority to exploit the weak. And when these families outgrew the bounds of justice, one hero family rose to take the mantle of the darkness, Auditora de Sicilia, a family tired to the shadows, yet devoted to the light, preserving order through assassination. Those who are born into it are subjected to mental conditioning before they even reach adolescence. They learn to suppress their emotions and endure grueling training to become the ultimate killing machines. The girl first tainted her hands with blood at the age of 15, with her grandfather clearing stating that she must embrace her talent as an assassin. This was the line she has been told many times. For as long as she could remember, she simply accepted it. Endless training twisted her very essence, casting a dark shadow deep within her heart. And with her spirit worn down and her emotions reduced to a faint whisper, Chloe came of age to attend the academy. At Joaquin Academy, students are assigned to classes based on their abilities, while the Auditora easily met the standard for Dragon class and above. Their role in the shadows relegated them to the ordinary class. Such was the agreement made between the family and the academy, as we see her grandfather instructing her to not stand out. Even her precious years of youth were completely taken away by her family. She accepted her fate as an assassin without complaint. After all, there was nothing that she could change. Or so she thought, until she met a certain boy. A subspace battle royale. While the deaths weren't real, Chloe still feared facing her first death. But before her fate, Chloe confronted her death in quiet submission. She didn't saw any meaning in struggle. It was what she was taught and all she has ever known, since her destiny was inevitable. Or so it should have been. It felt like the sun pierced through the dark clouds, casting a light on her frozen heart, causing a burning sensation to be ignited within her. A blade wielded with purpose, a blade swung to protect another, the boy had taken up his knife for her. It reminded her of a fairy tale she had read long ago, hidden beneath her pillow. It was an old picture book which she read happily. A story where a prince rescued the princess imprisoned in a castle. Her cheeks flushed red, a tingling warmth spread through her chest, and an unfamiliar emotion, soft and haze, blossomed in her heart. In that moment, she only thought of one thing, that this must be love. Back to the present, Giamma is nervous seeing her in that state, as Chloe's eyes stare turned blank. He tries to laugh to lighten the situation, but there was no response from Chloe at all, causing Giamma to realize that he is screwed, wondering, just where did it all go wrong? Was it when he decided to peek into a teenage girl's innocent imagination, or when he foolishly followed her just for the promise of food? Whatever it may be, he decides to act and starts talking about the moon and quickly leave in between that talk. But she completely ignores everything and asks if he saw it, and Giamma tries to feign ignorance by asking, "What?" and she points towards her diary with her cold voice. Giamma also glances at it, and again tries to feign ignorance, talking as if she was asking him about her study guide, but she shuts him quickly by directly mentioning her diary this time. Giamma doesn't understand when did she saw him, and why did she suddenly drop the formal tone with him as well? She is completely acting like a different person. They go back and forth with Giamma kept on trying to deny that he saw the diary, but in the end accepted it when she pestered much. And much to his shock, she immediately draws her sword upon hearing that. Giamma gets scared and doesn't understand what is going on, but as steps back, he finds himself against the window and realizes that it's the 4th floor. Even if he were to jump from here, he would break every bone in his body. And there is only one exit, which is guarded by Chloe, so he has no way out of here. He then hears a screeching sound and glances back, only to see the sword being dragged on the ground, and Chloe slowly walking towards him with her lifeless eyes and a blank stare. Seeing her, he wonders if she is in some kind of daze and remembers seeing something like it before. Her lifeless pupils, eye clouded in a murky red, which leaves no doubt in his mind that she is a yandere. Not to mention the abrupt change in tone and demeanor, making him wonder if it's some kind of unresolved trauma on her part. He was already finding it hard enough to deal with a yandere, and now there is an unresolved trauma on top of that, noting that him opening that diary has set her off. He realizes the danger of the situation, the fact that she would chase him to his grave, so he has to seize the moment if he wants to survive. Even her bloodlust is more intense than the Mao brothers. He tries to think hard to figure out a way from this situation, but he has 8 seconds left in his blessing, though his sashimi knife is back in his room. He remembers the kitchen knife he used earlier, but if he tries going for that, he is sure that he would lose a limb. Chloe grips her sword, preparing to attack, and Giamma steps back nervously and hits the corner of the study, on which he notices a box cutter, and right then, Chloe also jumps in to attack him. Left with no choice, he also pulls out that box cutter to defend himself with, initially wanting to resolve it peacefully. Suddenly, he gets a bunch of notification for using his ingenuity, increasing his mental grade with his words and actions not exuding intimidation temporarily. And his blessing also again activates with his eyes growing deep blue. We then see an epic panel of both of them preparing to strike each other. But Giamma tells Chloe that her hair's a little long, which visibly changes her expression. As Giamma continues, telling her to allow him to cut it, as he begins using the box cutter. Sometime later, Chloe wakes up in her bed in a confused state and calls out Giamma's name the first thing. She looks around, questioning where did he went. The last thing she remembers is stealing glances at him gazing out of the window while she was doing dishes. Suddenly, she gets anxious upon not finding her katana with her. But upon looking at the study side, she breathes a sigh of relief. For a long time, she blacks out whenever she holds her katana. Her grandfather simply compliments her for the good job, while she tries to ask what happened to her, but he only responded by telling her to not dwell on it. And she must embrace her talents as an assassin. But regardless, she is frustrated at herself for passing out when Giamma was here. And thinking about him, she keeps on blushing hard, hoping that she didn't say anything weird while she was out. She then notices a box cutter on the floor and wonders, why is it there? And not only that, when she feels her hair, she notices that it got shorter, and wonders if it was cut using that box cutter. Getting up, she finds her hair in the trash can, though she is thinking more about how Jiyama even cleaned up the room before he left, and calls him really sweet for doing that, and plans to write it in her diary before she forgets. She opens it and starts to write again with a happy smile, once again writing that she loves him. Meanwhile, Jiyama is out there vomiting from using his blessing only 5 seconds more than he should. But that vomit was not the end, as he keeps it on, noting that he is going to end up vomiting out everything he just ate. A bit later, his body finally calms down as he sits down on the bench and feels hungry again since his dinner is gone. He also wonders about Chloe and her identity. Generally speaking, swordsmanship strives to end an opponent's life in a single stroke, or subdue them completely, but Chloe's sword relentlessly targeted the vitals. As if it was meant for assassination, and if he hadn't seen it coming, he believes he would have died there. And at the moment when he felt his life was on the line, he instinctively went for her throat. But luckily, the box cutter wasn't long enough, so he only ended up cutting her hair. He also cleaned up the mess, so he hopes that nothing comes out of it. He also realizes that his motto is going to be hard to follow. He didn't expect it being ordinary would be this hard. But if he is being honest, when he was first thrown into the game, it's not like he didn't have any ambitions. Having reached the pinnacle with nothing but a sashimi knife. Letting go of his dreams wasn't an easy decision for him, but he believes that everyone has a role they are destined to play. Both the title of the game and the protagonist's blessing of the miracle. And it was also the blessing of the founding hero, Valor Joaquin, and if he remembers it correctly, they were the only two to possess this blessing in the entire game. And the description of the blessing was straightforward as well. It was to save the world from the Demon King. And so, the protagonist gets chosen by Bamang, a sword both holy and cursed. And in comparison, he only have a sashimi knife. There is nothing more to be said. He slaps his face and gets himself together. The endless stream of extraordinary people and situations that he has faced since entering the academy has made him forget about his goal. There were plenty of reasons that he gave up, and wonders if there is not a single normal person in this entire world. He has a rough grasp of the key characters of this game, but his knowledge of the world itself is really limited, and it's already been a week since he joined the academy. And at this point, the protagonist should have already awakened his blessing and begun the late admission process, which is the point where the game story actually begins. He knows the general plot, but he never played it to the end, and now he even regrets quitting it. But regardless, knowing the canon route up to the half story is still a big advantage for him. He plans to stick to the canon route no matter what, since if he start meddling in everything, he would lose the only advantage he has. And if he remembers it correctly, the storyline takes a sudden dark turn around the second semester of the year 3, which is when the demons realize the hero has awakened. And they launch an attack on the academy led by a legion commander. And as the conflict escalates, it spirals into an all-out world war. And from there, the game's story unfolds like a typical fantasy novel. Even Jiyama questioned, what the hell even happened to the story? All he wanted was the carefree simplicity of a youthful life he never experienced as a teenager. But seeing how they all die, he deleted the game without a second thought. But for him, the problem is the world he is in is destined for war, which makes him wonder if he is going to die in it as well. But he finally realizes that he got nearly 3 years, and he needs to stop running from reality and focus on what is possible, not letting himself DM. He plans to grow stronger and survive. And anyways, he knows that cliché game like this always have a happy ending, believing that the protagonist will save the world, and so, all he needs is enough strength to protect himself. He cannot let himself be some helpless weakling who gets killed off. And if he gets noticed, they might send him into battle against the demons, which he wants to avoid at all costs. And he also plans to minimize the use of his blessing. He had to rely on it a few times, but its strain is brutal on his body. He opens up its window and notes that it's indeed quite a powerful blessing. But this time, he notes that there are a lot of new entries here: body, mind, armament, and some numbers which seems to be levels. And the synchronization, below which are the question marks, which he don't get what they mean. He tries to tap on it, but the system denies access due to conditions not meeting. But for him, he doesn't find it important right now, but just another puzzle in this mysterious blessing, and right now, he prioritizes on improving his body and finding a new weapon. Since he cannot depend on the 30 seconds of his blessing of painlessness, He also needs to learn how to wield a sword that doesn't meet the condition of his blessing. And luckily there is a monster hunting training next month for the midterms, and there is a reward for it, which is the longsword, Murasame, a B-tier armament. If he can handle it well, it would serve him until his graduation. Plus it's too big for his blessing to activate, so he finds it to be a perfect weapon to use. He sighs, thinking there is too much to figure out, and while he is in thoughts, someone calls him out. As he glances back, he gets a glimpse of cyan hair. As we see, it turns out to be Abel, who is sweating quite hard as she tells Giamma that it's her seat. Seeing whom, he is left speechless for a second and stares at her for a bit. She again asks if he could move, and he suddenly gets back, thinking that he still cannot get over how pretty she is. He caught himself staring at her without even noticing. She also tells him that he don't have to leave, but just move a bit instead. Giamma wonders, what does she mean by her seat, since benches are supposed to be public spaces, and chalks it up to social class again. But regardless, he knows that getting involved with her would lead to a mess, so he decides to not say anything. And seeing her all sweaty and doing actions like that makes Giamma blush and once again thinks that she is really gorgeous. Abel looks up and expresses that it's the perfect spot for stargazing. Hearing her say that surprised Giamma. But he doesn't reply back, and wonders if she is really the Abel he knows, since even the handsome protagonist couldn't get her to warm up to him at first. She suddenly asks him if he also uses a blade as his armament, and he agrees while asking, how did she know? And she replies that her grandpa told her that swordsmen have a different look in their eyes. And once again seeing her expression, he blushes. She tries to offer him her sword and asks if he wants to try holding it. But he simply replies, not really, causing her to make a pouting face, seeing which, Giamma wonders if he upset her. But he isn't able to get used to her right now, because she is nothing like the Abel he knows. She again calls him out and confirms he knows her, don't he? Hearing which, Giamma wonders if she is trying to accuse him of something, since it's not like there is anyone in the school who doesn't know her. And so, he replies, sort of, and she replies that she don't know him, which Giamma doesn't understand the meaning of. She continues on that she finds it unfair that he knows her name, but she has no clue who he is. Giamma replies that they have only just met. Is there really a need for them to know each other's name? And she replies that he might be a spy for the Demon King sneaking into the academy, disguised as a student, because she finds it quite suspicious that he is out alone here this late at night. Giamma has a surprised expression and finds her claim ridiculous, but she pulls out her sword, making him realize that she might be serious. He asks the same thing to her, the reason she is out late at night, and she replies if he cannot tell that she has just finished training and working out. But Giamma replies that so did he, and she asks, what kind of workout? Giamma with a straight face replies, breathing exercises, leaving her quite surprised. And when she points her finger at him, Giamma notices the scars on her hand, and upon seeing that Giamma noticed them, she quickly hides her hands behind her back and blushes from being embarrassed, but Giamma acknowledges her hard work, which she also agrees on, saying that people don't understand what it means to belong to the Nibelung bloodline. You are expected to always be flawless, one tiny slip-up and you can become a target, and that he must also know that she isn't the top scorer this year either, which makes it the first time that she has ever lost to someone in her life. But despite that, she finds it strangely liberating, but she still wonders who beat her to become the top scorer, as she would love to meet them, so that she can tear them apart, making Giamma really nervous and shocked. He asks if she really has to go that far, and she replies that she was humiliated. She had to beg her grandpa to tell her who they were, and apparently they are not even in her class. On top of that, they even skipped the speech. So we should imagine how she felt at second place. But she finds it quite surprising that she is sharing all this with someone she just met, and Giamma asks, why is she telling him all this? To which, with a straight face, she replies that it's because he looks weak, as their family motto is to be unyielding to the strong and merciful to the weak, and all of her classmates are unbearable, so she don't really have friends either. Giamma realizes the reason why she is really cold with the protagonist hearing this. But regardless, she tells Giamma that she would get going now, and he also says his goodbye to her. She stops and again asks when he is going to tell her his name, and he replies that he is not going to, which annoys her. Fast forward to class the next day, Giamma finds his academy life to be continuing peacefully without any trouble, much to his surprise. Chloe also seems to made some friends and settled in just fine, but he has been busy avoiding her because she scares him. Sometimes, when their eyes meet, her new friends look at him with disdain, but he has already stopped caring about people looking down on him for being a special entrant. And it's not like he is the only one here, even though there aren't many of them, and for some reason, they all avoid each other, which he assumes to be due to some kind of inferiority complex. But he is thankful that he is not placed in higher-tier classes, because by now, the students in Star Class and Dragon Class must have split into factions and become wrapped in petty power struggles, which he found shocking enough when he played the game, and now that he is living through it, just the thought of being in those classes scares him. He is also now getting proper meals as well, as we see Medea provided him with a card for free food, which she believes he should have been given earlier as a privilege for being the top scorer. This card makes Giamma think that bowing to the director's office 3 times a day doesn't feel like enough to express his gratitude, as he has mad respect for her. He feels that he is fulfilling his duty as a student pretty well. He hasn't done anything so far that could negatively affect the main storyline. And if he keeps this up, he would be on track for the future that he wants. A bit later, we see a lecture is going on about 700 years ago after the first demon-human war broke out. Valor Joaquin recognized the need to train the next generation and establish this academy. But Giamma isn't too interested since he knows all of this already. The founding hero, Valor Joaquin, the hero faced Lekin, the Demon King's right-hand man, and the commander of the First Legion. Their brutal battle went on for over 20 years. And in the end, the hero emerged victorious. But Joaquin still lost one of his arms in the battle and could no longer fight. Screams echoed from every direction. It was a war of bloodshed and carnage with no clear winner on either side. And fortunately, the first demon-human war ended in a truce, and in order to train the next generation, Joaquin Academy was founded. And a non-aggression pact was formed between the two races, securing the 700 years of peace that still stand today. All the students comments and believes that there is no way there is going to be a war in their lifetime, with other worrying more about what to wear in parties. Giamma is the only one who is aware that this peace will be broken soon, and he is not surprised that everyone has gotten used to it. He at least wants to warn Medea about what is coming, but doing so would alter the canon route, and he has no idea what that would lead to. Despite constantly complaining about wanting to leave her position as an academy director, she was one of the first person to notice that something is about to happen thanks to her blessing of perception. And in order to protect her students, she was the first among the 7 stars to step onto the front lines. And while he never played the game up to that point, but he learned about her fate from reading the game's fandom wiki, she was the first of the 7 stars to fall in battle against the Demon King's army, seeing which, he was quite surprised. He still thinks about it, and wished that he had never known that in the first place. But regardless, the instructor ends the lesson for today's class and tells everyone to study hard since there are only 2 weeks till their midterms. Suddenly, everyone seems to be getting up from their seats in excitement to see something. The other students join in, wondering what is going on, and Giamma gets curious as well. Suddenly, he remembers that today is 5th of May, as he realizes what is going on. The students are out and watching, wondering which class he is going to, with people being sure that he is going to be in the Star class. Giamma also joins in, remembering that today is the day that he joins the academy, the protagonist of this world, Leon van Reinhardt. And it is also the day that the peace which lasted for over 700 years begins to crumble. Giamma calls Leon a lucky bastard, finding him handsome as they come. All the women in the game are drawn to him as well. And if this were an adult-rated game, Leon would probably be out of commission before he even faced the Demon King. And the girls that flocked to him, niece of the Spear Saint, Rachel de Murat, daughter of the Broken Bow, Ryojo Saki, granddaughter of the Blade Emperor, Abel von Nibelung, and all of them are amazing. Which makes Giamma express his desire to be in his place. But as the protagonist of this game, Leon will be among the first chosen to fight. And while he is saying chosen, but it's actually like forced conscription. But this makes him remember that even the founding hero only managed to seal the First Legion commander. So how strong must be the Demon King himself? It scares him as he wonders if this game has a shitty ending where the protagonist loses in the end. While talking to others, Leon takes notice of Giamma, which surprises Giamma as Leon gives him a friendly smile. This causes Giamma to realize this is blessing of the miracle, the protagonist will take care of everything. Because even with a single look at his face, Giamma was convinced, and just then, someone speaks to him, and he glances back to look who it is. We fast forward to training hall, where Giamma is swinging his sword. With this, he confirmed that his blessing doesn't activate outside the specification, and now he needs at least some fundamental skill in swordsmanship. We go back to moments ago, and we see Chloe was the one who approached him, asking if she did something wrong. Giamma nervously remembers that she almost killed him, which is what he likes to say, but they are going to be stuck together for the following year. And so he tells her that everything is fine, since having a peaceful life is his priority and making enemies isn't part of his plan. Hearing this, Chloe sighs of relief, causing Giamma to wonder, just who is this girl? Even if she wasn't fully conscious, he could still feel a sense of sorrow in her blade. It felt as she was pleading to be saved, and yet the bloodlust surging from her was so fierce that it made his heart stand on end. She would be even more dangerous than Mao brothers if her intent was to kill. Chloe again asks Giamma if he would like it if she made him dinner tonight, as she would love to cook for him, even though she might not be as good as him. From this, Giamma only has those memories remain. But her innocent face right now is something that could guilt-trip anyone, and he would feel terrible turning her down. But if he say yes, he might end up in pieces instead. But he suddenly realizes what he can do, and asks for another favor instead of dinner, while stating that she is the only one whom he can ask for this, causing her to get happy as she asks, "What is it?" And he asks her if she can teach him how to use a sword. Back to the present, he believes he needs someone to teach him, and Chloe is insanely strong. He has been watching How to Survive a Yandere video every night, which really came to his rescue. Chloe also arrives, asking Giamma when did he got here, since she has been waiting, and he replies that he just got here and asks about her. She replies the same, and he asks, "What time?" And she got here at 6:30, surprising Giamma since they agreed to meet on 8. He then takes a good look at her, as she asks if she looks weird, but he declines, not at all. He didn't notice when she was in her school uniform, but with her abs and muscles like that, he isn't surprised at her strength. And regardless, he finds her quite charming and a sight to behold, and hands her over a wooden sword. A bit surprised, she asks if they aren't going to use a real sword, causing Giamma to wonder if he just misheard that, because who the hell would use a real sword to train? He again reminds her that they are just training and won't want to get hurt, so they should use wooden swords, causing Chloe to compliment Giamma by calling him so kind. And upon handling the wooden sword, she squeezes it tight and takes a swing, which even generates gust of wind, which makes Giamma scared. He plans to at least not let her hit his head. And lastly, he decides to check his blessing one more time and sees the wooden sword is fine, and he has made lots of improvement physically. But he don't remember there being a blessing which improves like that or something that comes with so many extra features. He has never seen anything like that. As he is trying to think how to unlock other sections, Chloe calls him out, asking if everything is okay, making Giamma realize that he is the only one who can see the window, and to her it must be like him staring into blank space. He firstly asks Chloe to go easy on him, since it's their first training session. He finally grips his sword tightly, and we see they are about to begin. Giamma always preferred hands-on experience, since action speaks louder than words. To reach the pinnacle of any field, one has to give it all, body and soul. And the only reason he could adapt to the academy quickly because the foundation of learning were instilled in him from a young age. He realizes that his hands are slick with sweat and his posture is off, but his sword is firmly pointed at his opponent. Chloe finally charges at him, surprising him by closing the distance quickly. And Giamma is barely able to dodge his strike, making him think that he thought they were going to go easy. And in the middle of the fight, Chloe is able to quickly change her grip and open up Giamma's guard. And even with barely managing to parry her strike, it still hurts, but he decides to strike down thinking that it's his chance. But before he gets a chance, she quickly jumps up, with Giamma noting that she is getting even faster. As he starts to realize that perhaps she was taking it easy just now, he is still able to block her strike, but his sword starts to get cracks. And she keeps on attacking, as Giamma keeps on getting pushed back from the force of her swings as well. He notes that he cannot hold out much longer, and he is unable to see any opening to counter either. And finally, with consistent strikes, she breaks his sword in two. She apologizes for it, as she was planning to go easy, but she didn't thought it would break. But Giamma doesn't reply back, and Chloe's facial expression changes to shock. We see Giamma's armament condition has been fulfilled, but since the armament is damaged, it starts to adjust the user's personality through inhibitory control. And we see him getting surrounded by a wild flow of power, with system also decreasing his morality grade. His blessing of the Blade God, Inferior, has been activated. As we see, Giamma seems to be completely taken over by his blessing, with his eyes glowing sharp blue and his face donning a wild expression. Giamma seems to be in a trance-like state, not knowing where he is, and finding himself in a kitchen. He remembers preparing a fish and tries to switch to a cleaver, only to find himself unable to select it. Same goes for the sword. A message tells him to forget everything and continue to do what he was doing, and when it comes to sashimi knife, the system seems pleased. And when he holds it this time, he don't feel any pain. In fact, he feels great. The system puppets him, telling him that he simply needs to embrace it. And like that, inferior emotion gets activated. Chloe doesn't get what is going on, while Giamma wobbles on his feet. But the next moment, he turns into lightning, blowing dust with his insane speed around the arena. He crashes into Chloe, who is barely able to hold him back. And with a slash, he is able to send her quite far back. She hits a wall behind and takes up heavy damage, coughing blood out of her mouth. Noting that he has become like a completely different person, she barely dodges his next strike. Giamma looks epic and completely enraged, with his eyes glowing bright blue. While Chloe is unable to even stand properly now, she don't understand what happened to him and plans to quickly call of the training. But in the middle of speaking, Giamma once again jumps on her to attack. She realizes that she cannot dodge this, but she requests him to come back to his senses and repeatedly calls out his name. And we see him about to land a strike, only for her to loudly shout out his name. In his own world, Giamma sees the fish trying to avoid his knife, something which surprises him as it never happened before. He starts to hear noises, imagining the fish talking, and soon enough, he starts to hear the name, Giamma, being called out. A reflection of his face appears, and he finally realizes his current identity again, that he is Giamma Kong, and the one who appeared a fish to him. He also realizes that it's Chloe, who is desperately shouting out his name. And he finally seems to be waking up from his dream. And instead of striking her, he threw the broken sword right behind in the wall instead. And Chloe, who is on the verge of crying, receives a light bonk on her head by Giamma, who calls it a day while holding her by the waist. She blushes when he nudged her head and asks if he is okay, and he begins leaving quickly, assuring that he is okay, and thanks her for the training while heading out. While walking out, she thinks about Giamma's insane combat prowess, which she first noticed in the class placement exam, which she finds to be beyond sheer strength, almost eerie. It doesn't seem like skill, but raw, unfiltered instincts. In that moment, even after activating all of her blessings, she was helpless, while all Giamma had was a half-broken wooden sword. But in the middle of her thoughts, someone calls her out for enjoying herself. And it turns out be her brother, Nox Auditora. He calls out for doing all this shit at the academy, fooling out with a peasant that is, and she warns him to not call Giamma that. But he also warns her that if she keeps on spending time with him, the Auditores would eliminate him. But she simply starts to walk away, commenting that the whole Auditora family wouldn't be enough to beat him. Hearing which seems to have piqued Nox's interest in him. Back to Giamma, who thinks of his power more like a curse rather than a blessing. He searched for a weapon to break free from it, but that power pursued him and seized control of his body. He didn't felt any pain, but it was endless, intoxicating euphoria, laced with overwhelming helplessness. It was controlling him like a puppet and whispered temptation in his ears. Slash, cut, destroy everything. These are the words which echoed. He gave in, letting it consume him. But at that moment, he listened to Chloe's desperate cries and heard the name which he recognized as his own, Giamma Kong. Her call made his fractured world whole again, so he hurled away the wooden sword, which was beginning to feel like an extension of his body. He feared losing himself forever if he didn't let go at that moment. The yandere who tried to kill him not too long ago, this time, was the one who pulled him back to his senses. Though, she was the reason his sword was broken in the first place, and he was a bit angry at her for that, but also grateful. And so, he forgave her with a little nudge, and left in hurry in fear of his blessing activating again. But he don't know if he can keep avoiding it forever. It's a power close to a curse, something he was forced to bear after he was cast in this world where he doesn't belong. He never asked for much in this world, and only wanted to live a normal life, believing that he had to only encounter few ups and downs. But he came to realize that there is something inside of him, which is slowly trying to swallow his sanity. What he got was not a blessing, but a curse which is trying to devour him, a power from the abyss. We fast forward to 3 days later, and see students chattering in class, and Chloe talking to her friend. She glances to her side, noting that Giamma hasn't come to class since that day. And now that she thinks about it, they never even shared contacts, neither did she ask for it for some reason. When she went to his room and knocked, all she could hear were his pained whimpers. She wanted to break down the door, but thought he might resent her for it. She adored the way he resisted his chin, lost in thought. She lost count how many times she stole glances of him. She was too nervous to talk to him, worried that he would find it weird. At first, she thought that she fell for him since he protected her, but she believes that it was just an excuse she made for herself. And with that, she mumbles that she misses him. Fast forward to another day, Wobin shouts at all the students to maintain silence and orders them to self-study since it's forecasted to be rainy outside. He also notes that Giamma is absent once again, though he believes that he has a good reason for it, as a good instructor would trust him and wait. Suddenly, a door opens. Wobin is pissed at first for daring to interrupt the class, but is soon shocked. A shadowy figure appears on top of the staircase, and it's Giamma, who is back in the class. Seeing him back, Chloe jumps from her seat in shock, while he apologizes to Wobin for his tardiness. But he forgives him, telling him that it's not a problem and to get himself seated. Students around notices his changed look, and some even finds him handsome, while Giamma's facial expressions seems to have changed greatly. A bit later, all the students leave for the lunch break, and Chloe comes around to Giamma, who greets her, while she asks if something happened to him, and he assures her that everything is fine. She expresses her worry since he was gone for a few days, and asks if it was because of their training session. He thinks for a bit and replies that he was down with a nasty flu, and thanks her for worrying about him. Hearing which, she blushes and her heart skips a beat, and seeing her reluctant expression, Giamma is not surprised that she don't believe him. For the past 3 days, he was suffering from withdrawal symptoms, which left him mentally broken. He locked himself in a room, unable to eat or move. All he could do was curl up in his bed and pray for the convulsions to end. The price of using that broken weapon was so much worse than he experienced before, and his reflection that he saw in the mirror was his own, but the expression on his face was not. Even some of his hair started to turn white, which he believes is the penalty of using that cursed blessing. So, to him it seems that Chloe is feeling guilty, since she was the last person he met, and was his training partner, so it's expected, and he decides to help her out. He then asks if she remembers about asking for him to have dinner together, which they can plan for today, hearing which, leaves her blushing hard. Giamma continues that he wanted to try her cooking this time, and she gets really excited for all this, leaving Giamma to think that it really made her day. And in this case, Chloe plans to prepare whatever he wants to eat, and asks for his preference, and he replies that he is in the mood for fish. But while talking, Giamma suddenly feels something, and he quickly glances back, wondering, what was that? Both Giamma and Chloe turns around to see if something is wrong, and we see Knox is standing there, with a creepy smirk on his face. Seeing whom, Chloe is surprised, and noting her reaction, Giamma asks if she knows that guy, and she nods in agreement. He stares silently at him for a moment, and decides to walk to him, telling him to stop staring at him, and say what he wants to say. But he still glares at him, while Giamma notices something off about his eyes, and Chloe tells Giamma to not worry about him, and reminds Knox that she told him to not come here. Giamma notices their relationship, and from her voice, he finds Chloe to be scared due to the tremor in her voice. She questions Knox's intentions, and he replies that Giamma doesn't seem strong to him, and questions her decision for breaking the rule of their family for him. But she argues that it has nothing to do with her now, and he replies that the blood on her hands will never be cleansed. She is an auditora and bound to its legacy. Giamma notices Chloe's speech pattern to be that of a weeb, while Nox's speech pattern is like someone from a historical drama. Nox asks Chloe to ditch the low-born and return to clan, only to piss her off, as she shouts at him to not call Giamma that, while he wants her to ease up with the bloodlust, while being glad that all the students are out on lunch break. And their family name also rings a bell for Giamma, as he remembers who they are. They are a covert faction that appears through halfway of the game, specializing in infiltrating and assassination. While they are weaker in direct combat compared to other heroic families, when it comes to covert operation, they are unrivaled. They subject children to near abusive training from a young age, molding them into killing machines. As a result, every member of their family is absurdly strong. Though it only makes him wonder if Chloe isn't supposed to look like that instead, as Nox looks like someone who wouldn't kill to hesitate. In fact, someone who already has blood on his hand. To Giamma, it's easy to think why Auditores would root out threats to keep the order, and in this world, he don't mind killing. He might even think that it's justified. And looking at Chloe, he thinks that perhaps she wanted to live a normal life. But just like his blessing, she had no choice, as she was born into a family of assassins. To live like a machine, suppressing her emotion, while taking lives, he finds it tragic. He doesn't believe himself to be a hero, but he gets a thought, which even surprises him, that while he cannot save the world, perhaps he can make a difference for one girl, as he tells Chloe to let him have a word with Nox. He admits that even though his power feels like a curse, it won't let him lose. He is now back to square one. He thought he could run away from his blessing but failed. And if there is no escape from it, he would simply tear through it then. And so, he declares to Nox to follow him, as he would cut him, while recalling his name, its meaning and the fact that he is a swordsman. Back in the faculty, Wobin is in thoughts about Giamma's face, which looked as if every ounce of emotion was drained from him. Another teacher arrives, making fun of Wobin's bald head, which he tells her not to. Suddenly, his phone rings, and he is surprised to hear there is a request of subspace, and asks for the identity of the person who requested it. And the person replies it's Nox Auditore and Giamma Kong, hearing which surprises him greatly. Giamma is patiently waiting. There is 15 minutes until the battle. He expected it to be a long process, but it was done in no time. Medea told him to be careful if he must fight, noting that even though the physical injuries won't be real, the mental toll will be just as real, though he thinks that he only have to win to not let that happen. He is able to hear the crowd from inside. He never expected such a large crowd to gather. He tried so hard to stay under radar, but all of that was for nothing. Besides him, we see Chloe bawling her eyes out with tears. Giamma realizes that she must be taking it all as her fault, and tells her to not worry, as it's not on her. And she would even let him borrow a weapon, so he would definitely win. She informs Giamma that her brother is strong, and he replies, that so is she. But she goes on to say how he is known as the greatest genius in their family, and no one comes close to him when it comes to assassinations, and he earned the title of Master of the Knightly Techniques at just 14. A title which sounds completely ridiculous to Giamma. But now that he thinks about it, it always ends up this way, no matter how much he tries to avoid it. He remembers his master telling him that he is destined to use knives all of his life. And now the announcement is made for the participating students to step into the arena. And Giamma begins to leave, but Chloe still seems worried. Seeing which, he calls her out and tells her that there are many geniuses in this world. But when it's all said and done, he would always come out on top. He starts to step out on the stage. A bright light blinds his vision. Stepping out, he finds the whole stadium filled up, with some students cheering for him, and been waiting for a duel like this. He feels like a gladiator in a coliseum. It's much more than he expected. He also notices the star class sitting in the audience seat. And we see all the main characters, including the Golden Boys harem girls, are here. He finds it really a bit much more than he thought. Nox soon arrives, while being quite pissed upon looking at the weapons that Giamma bought with him. We see his bloodlust reaching Giamma, noting which, he realizes that Nox is quite dangerous. And so, he replies that a true master never blames their tools, pissing him off even more. Regardless, Nox plans to first start by cutting down his impudent tongue. Seeing his weapon, Giamma realizes that he got some top-tier equipment. It's the S-rank weapon, Crimson Edge, And he got two of them at that, and even cloaked himself with the blessing of the crow, which is one of the greatest stealth blessing in the game. And with that, he also concealed his bloodlust. But to him, S-tier armaments doesn't feel much, since he is not holding back with his dollar store knife either. And we see the subspace barrier finally being deployed, as everyone watches with interest. And right as the barrier is formed, we see both of them dashing towards each other. And Giamma quickly activates both of his blessings, with the system once again wishing him, "May the blessing of the blade god with him." Moments later, we see everyone is quite shocked. They are unable to see anything since they are moving too fast. They thought it's going to be a duel between two losers. And we see him moving around the battlefield at high speeds, leaving trails behind. The special class seems to be watching carefully as well, with Abel noting that Giamma looked so weak before. She never imagined him someone capable of this. Their fight continues on, with both of them trying to land a hit. Nox sends some flying slashes towards Giamma, but he quickly disappears and dodges. It irks Nox, who begins using his next move to try and overwhelm him with three-legged crow. Giamma seems caught up by the ability, and right as Nox thinks that he got him, Giamma disappears and appears right behind him, much to his shock. And he looks quite casual while doing all this as well. Many of the students are unable to see anything but think the second year is dominating the fight since Giamma is busy dodging only. But Abel knows that for those who can see it's clear, the second year is attacking relentlessly, but the boy is slipping away past each blow and wonders if he has no desire to fight. Nox realizes what Chloe said about Giamma not being an ordinary boy is right, as he went all out with his blessing, yet Giamma is dodging his attacks. And next up, he plans to approach more carefully by going for a powerful, wide-area attack. It is really pissing him off, and much to his shock, Giamma drops one of the knives he was carrying, finding it heavy. Seeing this, Nox is quite confused, and just as he is wondering what he is trying to do, Giamma grips his knife forward in a jab position. It leaves Nox even more pissed, as he assumes that he is trying to make fun of him. And so he also releases his full power, planning to end him in one strike. But while Nox is in middle of his speech, Giamma disappears from right in front of him. For Giamma, who just wanted a peaceful life, he gave in to this temptation. And with a simple thought that he will cut him, we see he is able to slice off his whole arm without Nox being even able to react to it. It came as a complete shock to him that he couldn't even see him. Even Leon is surprised seeing this. And Giamma plans to take on whatever he can get, whether it's a blessing or a curse for him, as he says his final goodbye to his peaceful life. Giamma doesn't end it on that. He ends up cutting his Nox's head off in the subspace as well. The battle ends and the subspace disengages, leaving everyone speechless. The whole battlefield has marks on the floor, utter destroyed. Giamma sheaths his knives, and even the special class is left speechless in awe of his strength. Everyone's reaction around is something that Giamma doesn't find unexpected. There is no turning back for him, now he knows. The knife which was made to slice fish, every time he does it, it's a horrible feeling to cut a person. But at least, all that took place in the subspace, which he calls a very convenient technology. Meanwhile, Nox is still trembling from the mental damage he got from the battle. Giamma found him strong. His strategic sense was sharp, forged through years of experience. But admitting that much bloodlust made his move too predictable, anyone could have dodged them, though he owes it all to his blessing. And with that, the winner is announced as Giamma Kong of the Wolf class. Everyone is shocked and surprised, the fact that a first-year special entrant beat a second-year student. But he smirks hearing all that, knowing that he brought it all upon himself. And now that he chose this path, he just needs to push through it. Even after the duel, students around the academy cannot stop talking about it. We also see Abel, who finally learns Giamma's name upon hearing others talk about him. Even she admits that it was quite a shock, yesterday's duel. When Giamma cut off Nox's arm, Abel was quite shocked, as after that point, she couldn't even follow it with her eyes. She never saw such absurd swordplay, with two kitchen knives at that. She took pride in her knowledge of the blades as the granddaughter of the Blade Emperor, but she never knew anyone could be that powerful with such simple weapons. Suddenly, she is hit with a realization and remembers her convo with Giamma about loving to meet the top scorer. She called him weak at that time, and even her grandfather denied that he don't know the identity of the top scorer of this year, which only made her realize that Giamma is the top scorer. It frustrates her to great extent, knowing that he is far stronger than she is, and how he must have been laughing in his head at her in that moment. She stands up shouting that she must have looked like a total fool. It wakes up Rachel, who asks Abel what is going on, and she apologizes and replies, "It's nothing." But she knows something is up, and Abel tries to deny that she has been feeling off since she didn't work out well lately. Rachel tries to force it out of her, but Abel starts to get flustered and denies it. So she starts to take her guesses: hungry, forget her armament, toilet, but Abel denies all of them. But when Rachel says, "It's a boy, isn't it?" she flinches a bit and starts to get super flustered with a beet red face. Rachel starts making fun of her, that even Lady Abel is a girl at heart. She never thought she would be into that kind of thing, but she tries to deny it still, that it's nothing like that. But regardless, Rachel asks, "Who is it?" since someone who captured her heart must not be an average Joe. Her first guess is Leon, which she also finds to have a handsome face. But she gives a strict no for him, making Rachel note that she is oddly hostile towards him. Her next guess is Giamma, which causes Abel to flinch for a moment. Seeing which, Rachel realizes she has hit her mark. And so, she grabs her hand and drags her with herself to come with her. When Abel tries to ask where they are going, she replies, "To the wolf class." Upon arriving, she smashes the gate open, shouting loudly to excuse them for a moment, and students are quite flustered upon seeing them both here. Rachel goes on to climb up on a table to search for Giamma from up above, shouting, "Where is he?" One of the students tries telling her to not stand on someone else's desk, but Rachel gives him a pose, telling him to let it slide since she is cute, which he immediately agrees for. But her actions seems to be annoying and embarrassing Abel. And soon enough, she finally spots Giamma, along with Chloe, who she thinks might be her girlfriend. But to her, it doesn't matter at all. In fact, she finds it even more fun and interesting this way. A laughing Chloe has her smile immediately stopped, as a large shadow looms over her. And we see Rachel getting really up close with Giamma and starts blowing in his ear, leaving both Chloe and Abel shocked, as she starts to climb up on his desk. He finally wakes up, not understanding shit about what is going on. And we see Rachel making up a sexy pose, while asking if he is finally awake. Giamma recognizes her as Rachel and wonders her intention for being here, while she comments that she didn't notice it before. But up close, he is actually cute. This all starts making Giamma instincts act up, telling him that it's dangerous. But before Rachel could say anything further, we see Chloe being absolutely pissed and grabs her hand, while questioning, "Who the hell is she?" Chloe glares daggers at her, but Rachel doesn't seem to care much and even looks confused. Seeing this, Giamma realizes that she was the danger that he sensed before, and she is in her Yanda Ray mode again, with a box cutter at hand. He knows that he cannot let Chloe wild in the classroom, and those two never interacted in the game, so it's even more confusing for him. Abel tries to drag her away for acting like this in someone else's class, and she replies that she was just saying hello. She then moves towards Chloe and pats her on the head, calling her a little girl, who shouldn't but in when adults are talking, and also to not play with dangerous objects like that. She then moves on to Giamma again, only for Chloe to attack her with the box cutter. Rachel also quickly glances back upon noticing her attack, and we see a splurt of some red liquid, which turns out to be some juice that some students spilled. Meanwhile, Rachel has caught her attack, calling her too slow and immature. Abel shouts at her to stop it, and with an annoyed expression, she easily throws away Chloe with one hand. But Chloe is also able to land on her feet perfectly afterwards, leaving everyone surprised and Giamma quite annoyed. The Spears Saint family, the heir of that family, values strength above everything, with the motto that overwhelming strength makes technique obsolete. She questions Giamma if she was his girlfriend, which he quickly denies, causing Chloe to get pissed at him, and Giamma simply decides to not look her way. He calls Chloe just a friend, while wondering what is going here. As before, he didn't notice that Abel was here too because of all the commotion. He questions them. Why did they came to find him? And Rachel replies that Abel is interested in him, so she thought to come to pay him a visit. This causes her to blush as she tries to deny ever saying that, but Rachel argues, Isn't that why she is here? And Abel replies, it's because she dragged her here, and Rachel replies that she didn't resist it, so she thought she was interested. Abel tries to argue even more, but suddenly notices everyone around talking about them. So she ends up saying that Rachel and her just misunderstood each other. She never wanted to come, causing Giamma to think, then leave already with a blank expression. And so, he tells them out loud to get going, surprising both of them. Rachel goes on to hug him and calls him pretty interesting, which she likes, and he replies that he is about as boring as it gets. She starts squeezing his hand, asking him to not be like that, and invites him to Netflix and chill in her room later. But it pisses of Chloe, who shouts at her to get the hell off of her Giamma. And it only makes Rachel laugh, as she points to Abel, if she is hearing this as well. But seeing Abel pissed as well, she gets a bit scared and decides to leave it at that, and plans to see him later only for him to tell them to not come back, and she calls him quite cold. And before going, she waves her hand at him, only for him to think, please get out of his sight, as he goes back to sleep again. But Abel turns around once again to take a look at him, and stares at him for a bit before going back herself as well. While walking in the hallway, Rachel didn't expected that, noting that it's just his cold demeanor, but there was something else, something faint coming from his eyes. She almost felt as if her throat was slit, and it made her shudder. She finds him nothing like the posers in the academy. She only went to mess around, but actually stumbled upon something good. Their family has for generation formed marriages with outstanding warriors, and she finds him a perfect fit for it. It's not a surprise that even the unconquerable princess took an interest in him. Rachel quickly turns around and apologizes to Abel, to which she replies that she should apologize to the wolf class instead. But Rachel tells her that she is not talking about that, much to her surprise. It's about Giamma, whom she don't plan to give to her. We now switch to Nox, who seems quite pissed at Giamma, planning to kill him. He never knew defeat in his life, so it was a big hit on his pride of him. He considered himself the genius of their family. He thinks that things would have been different if it was night, so he plans to perhaps assassinate him tonight. But upon remembering his expression, he gets scared again, and instead plans to call the whole Auditora family to cut of his head. He plans to kill him and bring back Chloe, someone he believes has even more talent than himself. He wants to act immediately, to make him learn the weight of his title, the Master of Knightly Techniques. Just as he plans to make him pay dearly, he finds Giamma munching on an apple right after opening his door, who casually greets Nox beside his bed, leaving him in complete shock. We now see a pissed of Chloe, though Giamma notes that she still looks upset, even though she was the one who pulled the knife first. She starts to mumble something like Giamma likes them big and shit. And when he suddenly calls her out, her behavior immediately changes, as she asks, what is the matter? He asks about Nox's condition, and she goes silent for a moment, and replies that he is currently hospitalized at an academy-affiliated hospital, but Giamma doesn't understand, since you cannot get hurt in the subspace. She replies that she don't know the details since she never visited him, but he is in the hospital without any physical injuries. But regardless, she tells her to not worry about him. Giamma didn't expect Nox to be so fragile like that, and hopes that he is not planning anything funny. And so, he asks Chloe if she can tell him which hospital he is staying at. And with that, we are back in the present, as Giamma asks him if he can eat that apple. Nox doesn't understand why is he asking anymore since he already took a bite out of it. Giamma comments that their family must be loaded for Nox to have a private suite like that. Nox questions, how did he knew that he was here? And Giamma simply goes on to pick up a knife instead, causing Nox to get worried if he is trying to finish him off here. But upon picking up the knife, Giamma simply starts to peel the apple, leaving him speechless. Though his peeling only makes Nox more confused, as he wonders, why is he so good at it? Regardless, he puts the apple back and advises Nox to at least eat some fruits even if he don't have an appetite. It pisses of Nox, who thinks that Giamma is pitying him as he begins taking out a weapon to kill him right here. But Giamma stops and speaks up, causing Nox to stop in his track as well, as he tells him that if he is thinking about revenge, then he promises that he would wipe out his entire family, which leaves Nox greatly shocked, as the door gets slammed on his face. And we see that Giamma even cut the apple whole without even him realizing. While walking out, Giamma notes that he had barely any fight left in him, and his spirit is thoroughly broken now, thanks to which his blatant bluff worked. The auditores are the greatest assassin family in the world. He doesn't believe that he can actually take them all down, at least not without his blessing lasting 30 seconds. Though he does believe that he can at least take 10 of them down, but it's the worst-case scenario, since he wants to avoid killing if it's possible. And right now, he feels as if he is in the middle of all the abnormality. He thinks that he is perhaps getting used to it, and perhaps even losing it himself as well. But now the real problem is the one female character he wanted to avoid the most, Rachel. She is the first girl who flirts with the protagonist, and ironically, her route takes the longest. But regardless, he would handle it when the time comes, and right now, he plans to focus on preparing for the midterms. He cannot slack off if he wants that reward, a weapon which he can rely on even after his 30 seconds are up, Murasame. The exam's objective is to defeat the demonic monsters in groups of 5, mixing classes freely. It's the cliché thing to drive trust among companions and is more about teamwork than individual skills. And if you're lucked out with good teammates, it's the perfect chance to get a free ride. And the monster that they would be hunting is a merman. They creeped him out in the game. He handled fish all of his life, but just the thought of them makes him feel uneasy. But if they were mermaid instead, they would have been nice to look at, though he still wouldn't burst out in a nosebleed. It reminds him of the fact that mermaid are demonkin, the backbone of demonic race. Compared to them, the demonic monsters are nothing, but thankfully, their target is only mermen, so there is no need to worry about them. He now starts reminiscing how it's been a month already since he joined the academy. The nights are still peaceful. And from peace, he remembers that it's been 700 years since the truce with the demon kind, though there has been few small and big skirmishes. Most notably, Bamon, he was the 6th commander who crossed the line half a century ago and attempted to resurrect the sealed 1st Legion commander. We see their fight, where he was determined to bring back Legion as Siegfried and Medea was fighting him. Humanity sent out the mightiest of the 7 stars, and they came out victorious after a week-long battle. But it came at the cost of 3 of their lives. But neither side wanted to escalate the conflict, though it made Giamma disappointed that the supposed strongest humans struggled this much against a 6th Legion commander. And the more he thinks about it, how did Valor Joaquin manage to seal the 1st Legion commander on his own? It only made him wonder if he was even human. More importantly, the war against the demon race is only 3 years away now. But there is no point in thinking about it now. He needs to stay focused on the present and the upcoming midterms. And while it's a huge pain, he needs to find some teammates, though he doesn't have any friends. But he realizes that he is one of the most famous people in the academy right now, which he might be able to use as his advantage. And so, he just needs to find a good group and crush the midterms. A week later, and much to his disappointment, not a single person asked him to join his group, which made him think that perhaps he overdid it in his battle with Nox. He was never good at finding the middle ground, so they all must be scared of him. Suddenly, he glances to his side and notices Chloe sitting alone, realizing that she is the same as him. Since that day, she has also become an outcast. He approaches her and asks if no one has invited her to join their group yet, and she denies. So, he asks if she is okay since he has always been a loner but she had friends before, and she replies that she is fine. He asks her to group with him then, though they would still need to find 3 more people. He finds Chloe quite reliable. The goal is to hunt as many mermen as they can in an hour, so she would be huge help since his blessing only lasts 30 seconds, and she even looks happy upon joining his group. Suddenly, Rachel arrives, greeting and shouting that she came here to play, only getting him annoyed. He questions her, why is she back, and she again replies that she is here to have fun. Seeing her, Chloe once again gets pissed, once again mumbling, so big, so big. Giamma tells her to go away, since he is quite busy and have no time, once again prompting her to say that he is quite cold while sobbing. He asks her to drop the act already, but she pretends that she cannot hear anything. She plops down on his desk, saying that she cannot hear him. Suddenly, she remembers and asks if he has found a group for midterms already, with Giamma noting that she is ignoring whatever he is saying, and replies that he hasn't. She calls it perfect and asks him to join her group instead then. But Giamma doesn't understand why she is inviting him, since there should be loads of people wanting to join, and she replies that they are all boring and she feels like something interesting would happen if he joins in. But he informs that he already agreed to join a group with Chloe, which Rachel finds as no problem since they have 2 spots left open. Giamma thinks for a bit, knowing that his grades are going to jeopardize and he might miss out on the reward. He glances back at Chloe once to ask for opinion, and she nods yes. And so, he agrees to join and asks about the group leader. And she replies that he is someone he would know, Leon, hearing which leaves him quite stunned, as he got himself in a crappy situation. Giamma starts trembling at just the thought of teaming up with him, thinking, just what did he do to deserve this? He can live with the fact that he got mixed up with the heroines and drew lots of attention, and he didn't really find the eye candy bad. But getting involved with Leon is another matter for him, as he is the protagonist of the game. It would completely change the storyline, and he would have to deal with it. And to make things worse, he found out that Rachel already submitted the form with his name on it before she even came to ask, making it the first time where he wanted to cut up a woman so badly. Chloe arrives from behind and asks if something the matter since he has been looking quite grim since that bitch. She means the blonde lady showed up. And he replies that he only felt a little out since he is going to be in a group with star class students. But Chloe assures that no one in the star class is stronger than him, and he thanks her for the motivation. He knows that now it won't be good to drop since Chloe joined the group behind him as well, and it's practically a dream team, so he should stay positive. He asks about the group meeting time, and she replies, according to the blonde, it's at 6 at the cafe in the central building. And like that, they are in the cafe with Chloe finding the coffee here quite good. Meanwhile, Giamma is having a hard time justifying the absurd prices here. He doesn't find the coffee much good either. But he still tries to maintain his adult composure. He ordered 1 espresso since it was the only drink at 10,001 range. But it's really bitter, and the faculty card doesn't work here either, so he doubt he would come here often. He then gets a notification from Rachel about them also arriving soon. And soon enough, the gate opens and Rachel is here along with Leon, apologizing for being late. And we see Giamma having his first encounter with Leon. He also notices another person right behind him, someone with orange hair. And his first expression of him is that he is a delinquent. Leon walks to Giamma and forwards his hand, which Giamma takes, and introduces himself as well. Leon compliments him for the subspace battle he had few days ago, and is happy to have such a reliable teammate, while Giamma notices his eloquent voice, finding the protagonist that he once played as. With that out, Leon asks everyone to introduce themselves. He starts up with it, and gives off a typical protagonist introduction. Meanwhile, Giamma is jealous simply looking at his handsome face. When it comes to Rachel, she skips the introduction since everyone already knows her. The orange dude introduces himself as Speed Weapon and that he likes heroes. Giamma finds his introduction really short and breaks a lot of his initial first expression about him. It's now time for Chloe, who is also introducing herself and is about to say something about Giamma, only for Rachel to tease her by once again saying, "My Giamma," causing her to get pissed. But she sighs and simply says that she joined on Giamma's invitation. It's nice to meet them all. And when it comes to Giamma, he also gives off a simple introduction. And now with that out of the way, Leon begins with their meeting. He shows up a map of the island. During the lunch break, the instructor handed this over to the group leaders. It's a map of Scopuli Island where their exam would take place. They would be transported there through the subspace gate. While the gate is in subspace, the island is real, so they can sustain physical injuries from the monsters. He zooms in. Their group has been assigned to northeastern area, 3 groups, including theirs would be hunting there. Assessment would be done based on which group subdue the most mermen, which would have a limited number of them available. He then starts taking questions, and Weapon asks, that island is known to have mermaids, so if there is any risk of that, and Leon replies that the instructor already conducted a survey prior, so there is no need to worry for it. Chloe asks if there is going to be combat or ambushes between groups assigned to the same area, and he replies, the focus on the exam is hunting demonic monsters, so he assumes it would result in disqualification. Giamma finds the question to be expected of a auditoria. And with that, the meeting is over and everyone starts going their own way, with Rachel pulling Weapon with herself to eat some stuff. Leon starts packing up as well, and Giamma finds it awkward now since he sat in the corner and is now the last one in the room with him. And while he plans to leave quickly, suddenly he is called out by Leon, who asks Giamma, where is he from? This question of Leon leaves Giamma quite surprised, and he is unable to get a read on Leon on what is he trying to ask. Because if it was something ordinary, he could have asked it during the meeting, yet he is asking it right now, privately, which makes Giamma have a thought, which he finds hard to trust. But Leon apologizes for asking the strange question. He asked it since he was wondering if Giamma was like him. This once again confuses him. He knows that Korean is the universal language of this world, but other countries exist as well, and it should be obvious that he is Korean. But Leon tells him to forget it and starts to leave. But Giamma stops him this time and asks, where is he from? He stopped Leon on an impulse, but he would be at unease for the whole night if he don't ask him this question. And so, Leon leaves while telling Giamma that he is German. This whole counter makes Giamma really confused and anxious. A bit later, and he is still pondering, thinking that perhaps it was nothing in the end. At that moment, a thought came to his mind. Could Leon be also from another world like him? Because it's not sure that he is the only one transported here, and it would make more sense for that to happen to a protagonist like him. He suddenly remembers his blessing of the blade god heightens his senses, so he picks up the knife to use it. And upon focusing, a voice tells him that Leon indeed belongs to this world. It was just like before. When he concentrates while the blessing is active, he can see a voice. But even with his blessing of painlessness, it still makes his head hurt if he thinks too much about it. But either ways, the Leon that he saw earlier was the exact one that he once played, as even a professional cannot capture him so perfectly. But then he don't understand why would he say that. And upon trying to look up a wiki page of Leon, there doesn't seem to be anything in this world like that. But regardless, he believes that it's going to be his last time getting involved with him, and if it happens again, then he would ask Medea for help this time. Who told him back then that he has been visiting her a lot recently, and when would they be running off together? Giamma doesn't plan to overthink, and finds himself strangely calm despite this being the last situation he wants to be in, which he believes is due to his blessing. He also opens up the blessing page and finds himself making steady progress. His body grade has improved from consistent exercise, but his mind and armament grade is still same, but the later would improve once he get Murasame. He also notices the synchronization stat has gone up a lot, and he would meet its requirements soon. But all he remembers doing so far is spend time with those siblings, so he assumes it could be related to that. He hates the fact that he cannot understand something about himself, and he don't have anyone to ask to either. Suddenly, he notices another thing which surprises him. His blessing of painlessness is increased, which excites him as he realizes that all of that effort wasn't in vain. And for some reason, it makes him really happy as well. And with that, the time goes on. We see Giamma doing up his exercise and spending time with his team, and also finishing up his training, making him quite satisfied with his results. Now on the day of the midterm, seeing the subspace, he finds its presence alone enough to change the whole atmosphere. He is then called out by Rachel, as we see his team has been waiting for him. She questions, why is he so late today despite being really punctual usually, and Leon casually greets him as well. And we see rest of his team and their positions as well. And looking at Rachel's weapon, he is quite impressed. It's called Heaven's Half-Breed, an S-tier armament, and Leon doesn't have his bombong right now. But upon seeing weapons armament, he is quite surprised and confused. Rachel tells him to not let its appearance fool him. It's one of the very few S-tier healing armament. Giamma knows that it's something hard to get even in-game after spending tons of money, but he don't know why it looks like that. And so, he gets up close to inspect it. Suddenly an announcement is made for the commencement of the exam. Wobin tells everyone to run away if they are in danger, since they are not heroes yet, but only students. And if they are injured or wish to forfeit, they have to contact their designated instructor immediately. And since it's time, Leon tells everyone to get ready for it and give it their all. Giamma also gets ready to go, but notices Chloe acting weird and asks her about it, who expresses that it's been weighing on her mind that mermaids are known to appear on that island. But Giamma tells her to not worry since the instructors have already scouted it in advance. In her hometown of Sicilia Island, there were occasional reports of mermaids. While it's rare to encounter demonkin outside of dungeons since they are in a truce, but the rumors persist which would mean they do appear. But Giamma pats her on her head, causing her to blush and think that since Giamma is with her, she has no need to worry. And with that, they all finally enter the subspace gate. We now see a flash forward, with Chloe hearing Giamma's voice, who seems to be calling her. And we see her suddenly waking up. She lost consciousness at that moment. Giamma asks her to reach the instructors, as we see her being confused at what is going on. And they seems to be actually up against a mermaid. We now go back in time shortly before the mermaids attack. Leon finds it amazing that Giamma is fine, and he replies that he don't get much motion sickness, though Leon believes it has nothing to do with that. A merman comes out, seeing which, Giamma seems quite surprised. He finds him much smaller than he thought, and now he feels silly for taking it so seriously, though he was planning to free ride anyway since he is at the rear. Leon tells him that they would encounter mature mermen at the designated area. These are just small fry. And they move on to catch up to Chloe, who they have sent ahead to scout the area. A bit later, we see a red trail blazing, and Leon realizes that it's Chloe. As she lands right in between them, Giamma asks if she was jumping through trees to get here, and she replies that she can avoid being noticed that way. Leon asks about what she found, and she replies that there is a den about half a mile ahead, which they arrive at in the next panel and finds tons of mermen hiding inside. Rachel counts at least 50 of them, and Giamma finds it a tough decision to make. Taking them out would guarantee first place in the midterms, but the leader cannot ignore the safety of the team. There is no way to call for help either inside there, so it's a risk. And the decision for all this is up to Leon. He instructed Chloe to survey the area beforehand, and asked Weapon to support them with buffs and heals from the back. Giamma is still unable to wrap his head around with Weapon being a support, which pisses him off as he replies that helping is the foundation of being a hero. Leon instructs Giamma to take the rearmost and keep an eye out for attacks, which he finds as an easy job. Leon himself plans to give order from the center and join the offensive when the situation calls for it. Rachel asks about her job, and Leon looks at her and smirks. Back to the present, seeing Leon's gaze, Giamma notes that he has took a decision, and we see him calling out to Rachel, who jumps up and throws her spear, imbuing it with lightning. And it lands right on the fire, in between all the mermen, who quickly gets on guard. And in the next moment, they are quite shocked as we see Rachel is right above them, preparing to attack. With a wide grin on her face, she grabs her spear back and slices their head clean off with a single strike. And we see Leon told her that her job is going to destroy everything she can. Upon finishing them up, she stands up straight, farming some aura. We now see Weapon blessing Rachel, who is mowing down the mermen like they are grass. They are trying to escape from her, but it doesn't help, as she uses her whirling wheel attack to kill up to 24 of them at one point. She thanks Weapon for the blessing, and Giamma is quite amazed at her power. Seeing which, Chloe gets competitive as well and draws her blade while using her blessing of the cat, and is able to slice up to 8 of them at once. 2 of them tries to attack her from the side, only to get chopped to pieces. And we see both Rachel and Chloe are moving towards each other while slicing up the mermen, which worries Giamma. They almost get into the striking distance of each other, and suddenly, a large merman appears, which is sliced to pieces by both of them quite easily as it was trying to attack. Rachel teases her by saying that the little kid has gotten faster, and she replies that she got that kill. And they both rushes past each other afterwards, relieving Giamma. And Leon asks him to trust them since they are their team, as we see they got all 60 of them. With that, Leon asks them to head out since they are done. Giamma notices his decisiveness and leadership. Acting as a solid pillar for his team, he does really look like that he belongs to this world to him. So perhaps he really was asking about his nationality, as just then, we see an attack grazing right past Giamma, and hitting Leon right on his side, shocking everyone. Giamma's eyes widens as he glances back and sees something rising up. And the water starts to rise up, and we see a mermaid is here. Everyone is shocked seeing it here, with Weapon stating that the instructors have supposed to check the area already. Giamma knew that it was going all smoothly. Now they have 2 options, either to run or fight, but if they try to escape while carrying Leon, they would get wiped out. Rachel tells Weapon to contact the instructors immediately, who replies he cannot since there is no signal. Giamma clicks his tongue, seeing that everyone is panicking right now. He is the only one keeping it together. So, he takes the command, telling Rachel to do whatever to keep the fish away from them, and Weapon to use every healing blessing he has on Leon, and tells Chloe to get out of here and evacuate any nearby students and call the instructors. She asks, "What about him?" and he replies they cannot escape with Leon. She seems reluctant, but quickly decides to follow his order and runs back at full speed. Rachel asks, what is he going to do now, and if he has some plan, and seeing Giamma walk toward the mermaid, Weapon asks if he has gone crazy. He stands in front, telling both Rachel and Weapon that he would leaving the small fries to them, as they once again ask while in shock and anxious, what is he doing? He closes his eyes to focus, knowing that he never liked cutting small fish. They don't have that satisfying feeling. And with a confident smirk, he starts taking out his sashimi, telling them both that big fish is his speciality, an innate power wielded by demons, akin to the blessings granted to humans, that is magic. A single attack of which is enough to neutralize the protagonist. It is the difference of power between demons and humans. Even with his blessing, he knows his victory is not guaranteed. In the game, defeating a demonkin always required a full party. They were designed to be raid bosses, yet he is facing one alone, a hopeless situation as he calls it. But he has already crossed the point of no return, and it would take at least 10 minutes for Chloe to come back with help, so he has no other choice. In the 40 seconds that he has to cut down that wretched fish. Due to his spirit, his mental grade became stronger, his words and actions became more intimidating. And at last, his blessing of the blade god activates, as he comments, "It's been a while, let's slice up some fish." We move to Rachel, who is fighting the mermen and is getting quite annoyed by their numbers at this point. She charges up her spear and pierces all of them through with one hit. She looks quite tired, and Weapon notes it as well, who wants to help her as well. But simply healing Leon is taking everything he got. He is in a rough shape, but is getting better. He then peeks at Giamma. He remembers how strong he is due to the subspace battle. But he still cannot believe that he is doing this. Just looking at the mermaid is giving him shivers. The mermaid begins preparing a magic attack and sends it to Giamma, who is able to dodge them quite easily. Noting that mermaid is a demonkin that primarily wields water-type ranged magic. And even if you don't understand magic, it's still a fish made up of flesh in the end. And so he plans to simply close in on it and cut it. He does land his attack, but she dodges and goes on to attack Weapon instead, who is terrified upon seeing her come close to him like this. But she suddenly screams, as we see Giamma has cut off one of her fins. But he found the attack to be too shallow, so he jumps back in again. He again tries to cut her, but this time, she ends up going into the water. Giamma is annoyed, unable to get any read on her moments. He notes that she may be targeting their wounded, so he has to move fast, and just then, Weapon calls him out. Seeing Leon, Giamma asks Weapon if he is good, and he nervously replies, "Oh, yeah," and Giamma leaves again, saying that he would be counting on him, hero. And seeing Giamma fight like this, the word hero starts to come to Weapon's mind, as he starts to find Giamma really cool. We get a flashback of their talk, where he talked about qualities of a hero, justice and courage, the selflessness to sacrifice himself for others, the strength to transform despair into hope. But even at this academy, he never ran into someone like him, at least not in the dragon class. Which is why he asked Rachel to let him join this group, because if it's Leon, he believes that he would have the qualities of hero he is searching for. Giamma does agree in his mind, but Weapon also tells Giamma that he don't think he is cut out to be one, and he replies that he wouldn't want that even if it was offered to him. But right now, the scene in front of him is saying an entirely different story. The mermaid launches some magic fishes at Giamma, who jumps over them. But much to his surprise, they are locked onto him. The mermaid smirks and controls them with her hand, and they start to follow Giamma at high speeds. He cuts off from a large rock, but the attack doesn't let up and still follows him. Leaving those to chase behind him, the mermaid turns to the other side to launch another attack. Rachel shouts Weapon's name in worry, seeing that it's aimed at him, who also realizes that she was after them all along. But before she is able to fully launch her attack, Giamma cuts off her hand. But he once again finds the attack too shallow, annoyed at collecting only arms all this time. But the sliced-off hand still ends up launching an attack, but the direction changes to the ceiling of the cave instead, and it can be seen from the outside as well. And the homing attack that was following Giamma ends up hitting the mermaid on the face instead. One of the students outside noticed the attack and tells the instructor to take a look, stating there was a super loud noise from over there and a flash right before she turned around. And it quickly starts raining afterwards, so she tells the student that it was probably lightning that she saw and asks her to come with her. And while leaving, she has a confident smirk on her face. Back to the cave, there is a large hole in it now, and all the mermen starts to run away, much to Rachel's confusion. We see a large rubble in front of Giamma, who thinks that in 30 seconds, he was not able to land a single critical strike, which he thinks is because he was busy watching out for these two, and the mermaid got buried in the rubble, so he wonders if it's dead already. But it quickly gets back up again, and he is not surprised, knowing it won't go down that easily. Giamma once again prepares to fight, taking out his coat this time as the mermaid rushes at him to attack. He tells Rachel that since the mermen are gone now, he would be leaving Leon and Weapon in her hand, who nervously agrees. Weapon is unable to believe that Giamma is able to hold his own against the demonkin. At first he thought that he was out of his mind, but now he believes there might be history in the making. Giamma has 10 seconds left on the clock, and now he can focus as he grips his knives tightly. The mermaid is pissed at rushes at him as he mocks her to come at him. Giamma closes his eye for a second and opens it back up. This time, one of his scara has some black mist forming in. And with his full focus, he leaps on to attack her, with only one phrase in his mind: "I will cut you." We now switch scenes to Chloe, who is running to find help. She slashes everything on her way. Her legs are screaming in pain, as if they are going to give out any second. It hurts so much for her, so she cannot imagine what pain Giamma is going through. She finds him to be the strongest person she has ever met. And yet, he was always reluctant to fight. He avoided whenever he could. And only when absolutely necessary did he draw his blade. She left on his request because she also thought that it was the best decision. Suddenly, she hears a loud explosion from that place and is quite shocked. This gets her immensely worried as she begs Giamma to please stay alive. Suddenly, she starts to trip and wobble and almost falls, but quickly regains her balance, knowing that she cannot fall here. And now, she finally starts shouting for someone to help. Suddenly, she is able to feel some presence up ahead, but her senses are all over the place, so it's hard to tell for her. She notices there are mermen there, though it's an incredibly bad timing for her. But when she attacks the figure, we see it's Abel, who is able to block her attack. And both of them are shocked upon seeing each other. Finally realizing that it's a person, Chloe quickly apologizes and falls right in front. Her teammates assumes that she is here to ambush them and don't plan to let her off easily. But Abel tells them to hold on, as she knows her, and Chloe begins explaining everything to her. Back to the fight, Weapon doubts that he would ever witness something this astounding again. What is unfolding before his eyes is like watching a master chef expertly slice a live fish, flailing on his board. Giamma is actually completely overwhelming the demonkin in combat. And without a doubt, he believes that this sight would be engraved in his memories forever. Noting that Giamma is not just moving fast like in the subspace duel, he is deflecting attacks and closing in with flawless precision and lightning-fast techniques to cut. The simple act of cutting, followed by a perfectly natural and inevitable result. He looks at Rachel, noting that even the heir of the Spear Saint lineage raised alongside the strongest has probably never seen something like this. And at this rate, he believes he is really going to defeat the mermaid. But she noticed something and suddenly calls out to Weapon, who looks to his side again. And she saves him from the attack, telling him to stay focused or he would get himself killed. He found himself almost dead from that. He almost forgot amidst of this surreal spectacle. He calls the matchup against this kind of magic against some sashimi knife absurd. And even if he is winning at this moment, if a magic that he cannot avoid comes his way, then it would be troublesome, even for him. The mermaid again prepares to use another attack and swings her hand down at Giamma. A bunch of attacks comes towards him right from above, which he dodges, as he starts running on the wall while deflecting and dodging the attacks. At this point, His knife starts to get damaged, which he notices and hence throws it towards the mermaid. And it ends up cutting the mermaid in half. And at the next moment, Giamma has already closed the distance and is about to cut her. She gives off a large screams, and Giamma lands her attack. And much to his shock, we see a merman coming in between, blocking his attack. The mermaid smirks, as she torns her flesh and eats it herself, and prepares it into another attack, this time at a point-blank range while in midair. Weapon shouts at him to dodge, and he replies, he would if he could. And in the next moment, he seems to be in another space, standing in water with a clear sky in front. In the water below, he sees a red thread, which he picks up and looks to his side. And the sky itself seems to be cut in half, with a clear red cut going across it. His blessing tells him to cut, and he realizes that it shall be cut. Back to the present, he can still see that cut right in front of him. And so, he grips back his knife again, and performs a slashing movement. With only one thought in his mind, I cut magic, causing the rain around to disperse, and the mermaid to be split in half along with her magic itself getting cut. In the next moments, we see Giamma standing over the shriveled body of the mermaid. His figure towers over her, as he looks down on her body with an unconcerned look. She still seems alive. We can hear her grunting in pain, and both Weapon and Rachel looks quite shocked by all of this. And Giamma finally finishes her off by cutting her head, as it rolls down the hole. Looking at him, Weapon realizes that Giamma won. He actually defeated a demonkin, all on his own, a mere first-year student. Suddenly, blood gushes out of Giamma's mouth as he falls to his knees. Rachel quickly rushes over to his side, and Weapon looks back at Leon, who now seems fine enough to him. Suddenly, he hears some rushing over, and gets worried thinking if it's more mermen. But it turns out to be Abel and her team, and Weapon finally gets relieved seeing them here. They seems quite shocked seeing the scene, and even more surprised upon seeing a body of a mermaid. They all wonder why was it here and all that. Meanwhile, Abel is focused on Rachel, who is hugging Giamma tightly. She seems a bit annoyed, thinking that she don't need to cling to him like that. Her gaze then meets Leon, who chuckles seeing her, causing Abel to think that his teammate is on the brink of death, and yet he is caring about keeping up his appearance. She is really unable to stand him, and informs everyone that she has contacted the academy, so the instructors should arrive in an hour, and asks for someone to explain what happened here. Weapon calls the instructors useless, since a mermaid showed up even though they checked the island before. Abel tells him to spare the grumbling and explain, and he gets annoyed by Abel's tone as if she is giving him an order, so she replies that she is only asking him. He replies that she won't believe him anyways, but he would still tell her, since explaining is his area of expertise. A bit later, he has explained everything, and Abel recounts that he is saying a mermaid showed up and Giamma took it down by himself. And he replies, exactly, leaving her speechless for a moment. The fact that a mere first-year student defeated a mermaid, the folktales that her grandfather told her as a kid sounds more realistic than that. But even though it sounds unbelievable, all the circumstances she sees points it to be true. And they have no reason to lie either. But it's a story that feels straight out of a legend. As a descendant of Iran Nibelung, she carried a legacy that set her apart from the moment she was born. In other words, her lineage was different than others. Even so, she refused to let it define her, and pushed herself through grueling effort and uncovered her own talent. It is how she got here today, and yet, she finds the difference between their power to be so staggering, making her think that she was just an ordinary. She asks one of her teammates to heal Giamma with her blessing, noting that even though his body is in tatters, and he looks near death, he is no older than her, and yet single-handedly faced and defeated a demonkin. It does annoys her as she sighs in defeat. Weapon confirms with her that if she contacted the academy already, and she agrees. So he suggests to keep the details of this incident to themselves. She asks for his reason, and he replies that the instructors surveyed this island in advance. Which is weird, since even this place is big. This cave is not exactly hard to find for anyone. So why did a demonkin showed up here? Abel starts to realize what he is saying, and Weapon says that it's just a guess. Leon asks if he is trying to say that there is a Demon King spy within the academy, leaving both Abel and him speechless for a moment. He replies that he is not saying it as a fact, but there might be a possibility. Abel agrees, knowing this area is easy for students to stumble upon. If not for Giamma, Leon's group would have faced a tragic end here. She tries to think of a reason for Demonkin to show up here, since there might be conflict during the 7 centuries of truce, but the demons never dared to directly harm a Joaquin Academy student, especially with a clause explicitly stating that it could lead to a war. She suddenly gets a terrifying thought, and Weapon realizes what she is thinking and tells her that she is reaching too far with it. All he is trying to say is there is a possibility of a spy in the academy, but they shouldn't rush to conclusion based on just this incident. Leon believes they need to get their story straight then, since if there is a spy in the academy, Giamma could be a target if they learn that he alone defeated a Demonkin. Weapon agrees, but he also doesn't feel right to completely bury this. Not after what Giamma did for them, and Abel speaks up, suggesting, why don't they ask her grandpa then? Back to the academy, we see Giamma resting in a bed. He finally wakes up and reaches out his hand upwards, noting that he is in a hospital, and that he is still alive. He remembers the mermaid's attack before its death, Magic Ball. It was an utterly unavoidable attack, but he saw it. His sashimi knife sliced through that thread and the magic split in half, bursting like a water balloon. And it was without a doubt like water. He wonders, what was that feeling? Ever since he manifested his blessing, it's been an endless wave of indescribable sensations. He opens up his blessing page and notes his mind grade increasing to 4, due to which he wasn't scared when facing the Demonkin. And finally, his synchronization has gone up and thread is also visible. He recognizes it as the thread he saw across the Demonkin's magic, which must have unlocked at that moment. Suddenly, Medea arrives and tightly clings to Giamma, worried that he wouldn't pull through, and plans to tear those instructors apart who surveyed the island beforehand. He tries to tell her to let go, and she realizes that she got carried away and pulls out her subspace pouch to give him something. He is surprised to see a subspace pocket, and Medea finds what she was looking for. And it's his reward from the midterms, Nirasame. Giamma opens up the blade stats and takes a peek at it. Medea hopes he likes it. It was supposed to be given in a formal setting, but things turned out like this. We see someone peeking from afar, and Medea calls him a geezer and to quit acting shy. It's Siegfried who tells her to not call him that. He finally shows himself, with Medea scolding him for acting like a teenager in his 70s. Seeing them both again like this make Giamma remember a familiar sight as he asks them, what is going on? Medea replies that his group mates told her everything. So, on the behalf of the whole academy, she apologizes to him, finding themselves to be responsible for everything that happened, because of which, not only his group, but all the students on the island were in danger. She also swears on her name that she would get to the bottom of why a Demonkin appeared there. Siegfried also commends him for saving the students. And he simply scratches his cheeks, saying that he did what he could. Medea calls what he did truly commendable, but until they uncover the truth, they have to keep it under wraps. And while it's ironic for her to say this as a director, she feels the problem lies within the academy itself, and she knows that he deserves better than this. And he replies that it's all right, leaving Medea to tell him that it's okay for him to be a little selfish at his age, since he is almost like an old man. Now as they are walking back, she suddenly stops in the middle, asking Sieg if he remembers. The day they first met in this academy, she told him to move when he was lying on a bench, and he drew his sword at her. It was about him not taking orders from anyone, but he replies that he don't remember no such thing. To her, it feels like yesterday, and yet it has been 60 years here, finding life truly full of surprises. And yet, even after all this time, they were barely able to make their mark on this academy. This place was already ancient when they got here. A lot has happened over the past 7 centuries, but the academy has always trained its students, protected them. But this time, thinking about this incident makes her pissed off, as her energy breaks off the window. The shattered glass starts to come onto them, but she deploys a barrier in front, and we see her being quite pissed. Before the midterm exam, she had the instructors conduct multiple preliminary surveys. While rare, the island was known mermaid sighting area, so she exercised utmost caution, but despite all that, seeing her like this, Siegfried pats her on the shoulder to calm her down, and she apologizes for getting a little too caught up in the moment. But she quickly reverts back, finding Giamma amazing for defeating a mermaid on his own, annoying Siegfried with her swings. She asks him his opinion about him, and he thinks of him as extraordinary talent. He has seen countless prodigies and so-called geniuses, but they only be bright for a fleeting moment before fading away. In hero families, despite the prestige, the smallest of glimpse of talent is enough to earn that title. Genius, a word tossed around carelessly, devoid of meaning. He didn't even let his granddaughter have it. A talent so distant, so unfathomable. If there is such a thing as genius, then it must be Giamma, which makes him wonder, how far could he go with time and experience? And perhaps, the realm that Siegfried has been chasing his whole life, Giamma would reach. And so, he walks away, saying that he would be staying at the academy for a while. And she smirks hearing him say that and asks to clean up the mess with her. But he replies that he remembers no such thing, just like before, making Medea call him a broken record. Back to the class, Giamma realizes that the fact he defeated a mermaid has been kept hidden, just like what Medea said. While not petting himself on the back, he thinks if he hadn't taken down the mermaid, his class wouldn't be laughing like this right now. The first thing he did after leaving the hospital was head to the academy forge. He had to reforge and strengthen Murasame. Since it falls outside of his blessing, it's nothing but a hulk of iron for him right now. The blacksmith gives him 1 week for it, and is quite fired up, so Giamma leaves, hoping that it goes well. Chloe also arrives, asking Giamma about his condition, and he replies he is good and asks what happened to her. And she replies that she hurt herself a little, but thanks to weapons emergency treatment, the doctor said that she would be fine without Crukthis in a week. Though she quickly apologizes for getting a bit carried away, and Giamma is relieved seeing her usual self. Giamma realizes that it wasn't his effort alone, even if he was the one who defeated the mermaid, but it was thanks to everyone fulfilling their roles. Chloe's rescue call, Rachel holding back the merman, and weapon healing buffs. As for Leon, he don't know what he even did, which makes him doubt if he would be able to stand up to the Demon King, but chalks up the recent incident to him getting caught off guard. Suddenly, Instructor Wonbin arrives in a hurry, telling everyone to get seated and quiet down, as he have an announcement. As a temporary arrangement, they are getting an additional instructor. Everyone is quite confused by that, but soon that expression changes into shock. As we see, it's none other than Siegfried, who is their temporary instructor. Everyone is shocked seeing them here, and even Wonbin is trembling before him. Seeing him here, Giamma is also shocked, as he wonders, what is he doing here? We now switch scenes to some old guy getting roughed up and apologizing. And it's the instructor from that island, Kim, who seems quite pissed at Elder Claudia, as she informs him that the 5th Legion commander is quite furious. She takes out a gummy worm and eats it, telling Elder Clad he should have done it right when he had the chance, and he once again apologizes. She once again hits him on the face, getting annoyed by his constant apologizes, and dares him to do it again. She wanted him to bring her Leon half dead, and even gave him a mermaid at his disposal. And she believes that the Blade Emperor has decided to stay at this academy due to his blunder. And Elder Claudia once again accidentally apologizes, leading to a kick right on his face, which starts to piss him off, calling her a mere instructor at school. She bends down to clean the blood from her shoes, but the more she thinks about it, the more absurd it sounds. A mermaid getting defeated by a bunch of first years, but considering this year's admission, she believes anything to be possible. But Elder Claudia corrects her that it was defeated by a single student. It surprises her, as she asks if it was Leon. But he declines. She once again asks, commenting that she hates people who beat around the bush. And he replies that it was this year's top scorer, Giamma Kong, and she remembers him as that special entrant. Hearing which, she starts to leave, commenting that things are now getting interesting. Back to the academy, we see all the students training with Instructor Wonbin, and Chloe is sitting on the side, cheering up for Giamma, who wishes to be in her position right now instead. Suddenly, Siegfried arrives from the back, shouting at Giamma that he is slow and if he hurt his leg during the exam, and he declines. But he is quite confused by Siegfried running besides him right now. As a descendant of Valor Joaquin's right hand, he inherits the title tied to her name, Blade Saint, the man recognized as the strongest human. He also becomes Leon's sword instructor during the war, playing a crucial role in the story. So he don't understand why is he here, as he requests him to go to Leon instead, knowing the story is going completely off the rails. From this, he don't remember Leon ever gaining the Blade Saint title. It's a well-known incident, so he knows. It causes him to think that it's perhaps fine since Leon doesn't get the title anyways. But quickly realizes that it's not, but it's seriously uncomfortable for him. Because right now, it feels like an army general is running besides a foot soldier. He tells Giamma that stamina and endurance are backbone of a warrior. His extraordinary talent would mean nothing if his body cannot keep up. So, he should stop looking for shortcuts and run instead, and Giamma acknowledges. But Siegfried tells him to say it louder, which he does, causing Siegfried to smirk. And he asks Giamma to follow his lead. Seeing him run like this, Giamma wonders if that old man even ages. A bit later, he prohibits the personal armaments during the training, except in field exercises. And instead, they have to take the weapons here and familiarize themselves with it. The first thing that Giamma notices is the sashimi knife, while others are quite confused. One of the students raises their hand to ask a question. That to him, it seems more practical for their future to train with their family heirlooms, so he don't understand his decision. And Siegfried explains that foundation is the key to all things. Relying too much on the superior weaponry would hinder personal growth, leading one to confuse the weapon's strength with their own. He asks another thing, if it wouldn't be more important to master them and overcome their flaws, and Siegfried replies that even the finest weapon is meaningless if the one wielding it lacks skill. Moreover, a true master never blames their tools. Hearing this resounds with Giamma, who nods in agreement. And once they master the basics, their proficiency with their armament would improve as well. Those who excels in using basic weapons are likely to achieve high marks in the end-of-the-year class advancement evaluation. Hearing which motivates everyone, leaving Giamma to recognize that he is not just a doormat since media always made fun of him. Seeing the stuff left, he already saw it coming. And so, he again ends up picking up the knife, and Siegfried glances at him, making Giamma realize that it was part of his plan. And now to help them accustom to their new weapons, Siegfried suggests a one-on-one sparring session between students. But the students are concerned since it's not the subspace and they can get hurt. So, Siegfried tells them that every one of them carries the legacy of the founding hero. A warrior can only truly grow through training that mirrors the dangers of actual combat. But still recklessly battling could cost their lives, so he plans to show them a demonstration first. And everyone is quite excited in seeing Siegfried's skills in person. But Wonbin is scared and nervous, thinking that he is in the most dire situation of his life, that he is having a sparring match against the Blade Emperor. And as he is about to step in, Siegfried stops him, and instead calls out Giamma's name, telling him to step forward, which surprises Giamma quite a bit. All the students seems excited in seeing the Blade Emperor's demonstration in person, but they are annoyed at Giamma for getting picked by him. And Giamma can hear all of them. Siegfried asks if he has recovered fully, and he agrees that he is completely fine now. So, the Blade Emperor tells him to raise his blade. But Giamma thinks that it's too much, even if it's a sparring. He might be in a perfect shape right now, but clashing blades with the Blade Emperor won't be a simple matter. At least one of them would lose limb or their head. And yet, his instincts are pushing him to take this fight. But he knows that he already strayed too far from the canon path, so he needs to consider the consequences it could bring. As such, he tells Siegfried to lower his blade, as he is not suited to be his opponent, leaving everyone around to mock him. But he glances up at Siegfried again, who calls Giamma out for not having any pride as a swordsman, and the fact that he is hiding his strength, which would make his talent no good if he is such a coward. For Giamma, pride is something that has been engraved in his heart since he first earned the title of the finest knife master in Korea. It's the very thing that kept him from putting down his knife. He knows the Blade Emperor is trying to provoke him, while everyone else is expecting him to run away in disgrace. But even so, he clenches his knife tightly. Wonbin realizes what he is about to do and tries to stop him, but Siegfried signals him to not do so, who realizes that Giamma has made his decision. Everyone seems quite shocked as Giamma draws his knife, telling Siegfried that he looks forward to his guidance as he activates his blessing of the Blade God. We now see them standing in a blank space with Giamma getting ready to fight. For Siegfried, this moment is as vivid as ever. It's the enlightenment of the blade, a memory he had of a one-armed wandering knight from when he was still in his early training. That knight demonstrated him the blade's path, which was undeniably in that realm. And so, since the day of the class placement exam, he has been keeping an eye on that boy, believing that he holds the key to help him reach the realm. Giamma immediately gets behind him as he tries to swing his sword at him. Siegfried again tries to attack him at his back, but Giamma once again dodges much to his surprise. He then rushes in to strike Siegfried, and their sword clashes against each other. Siegfried notes his lack of fear, and without a hint of hesitation in Giamma's charge, he has a peculiar blade path, like a swallow in flight. Giamma once again tries to strike, but Siegfried blocks, and his knife hovers in midair. But Giamma catches it in midair and once again goes for an attack. Siegfried notes that his physical strength is incomparable to what it was before. He is able to push him back with ease. However, his blade is far from light, as he gets serious in his attack. Meanwhile, one of the students thought that Giamma's win in the subspace duel was just a fluke. He figured he was somewhat capable as a special entrant, but nothing more. So he don't understand why the Blade Emperor favors him so much. They all hope that he gets his ass kicked by him. But much to their confusion, they don't see a single movement from either of them, not understanding the reason for them to be standing still like that. But Wonbin realizes what is going on much to his shock. He was doubtful of what the Blade Emperor said before, but right now he realized what that meant. A bit before, he tried to warn Siegfried that the director won't approve of this, but Siegfried questioned him if he honestly thinks that he would engage in an actual battle with a student. And so, he tells Wonbin to not worry, since if he is correct, Giamma might be able to access that place. Wonbin realizes what Siegfried is getting at, and tries to confirm, and Siegfried indeed confirms that he is talking about the mind plane. Not only Giamma was able to access that plane, but he also withstood his strike, which Siegfried calls truly incredible. The duel in the mental place is a fierce battle of wits. Just from clashing blade with Giamma, he can tell that even in this moment, he is continuing to grow. And so, Siegfried smirks and starts to envelop his sword in aura, and activates his blessing of the Blade Phantom. He truly wants to see if Giamma can go this far, and if he is able to withstand it. Back in reality, we see their powers are now showing. Wonbin and other students are shocked, with the former noting that they have already crossed into the real world. The air and ground around them starts to rumble, while Wonbin gets nervous. Since it wasn't the part of the plan, he realizes that he needs to stop them. They both rush at each other, as Wonbin shouts at them to stop. But just then, Medea arrives, shouting at Siegfried, calling him a moron. Questioning, what the hell is he doing to his student? Has he lost his mind? A bit later, and Siegfried is quick to give Medea an apology, but she is still annoyed. We go back in time a bit before where she was lashing out at Siegfried for using his blessing against a mere student. All the students watch over the commotion, and Siegfried tries to state that it was not his intention, and Medea tells him to shut up in anger. Giamma sheaths his blade again, while Siegfried realizes that he lost his self-control and even went as far as letting his aura manifest. Medea asks Siegfried if he is even listening, who simply apologizes much to her surprise. In the 50 years that she has known him, she never heard him apologize, yet today, she heard it twice. She once again asks on what happened exactly. She is really baffled that he used his aura against a student, which would have become a problem if she hadn't stepped in. But Siegfried replies that he couldn't have gained the upper hand without it, much to her shock. She is in disbelief that she just heard Siegfried, with all his stubborn pride, say that she is well aware of Giamma's talent, but she is even more aware of Sieg's strength. Siegfried continues to inform her that Giamma is already at the stage where he could enter the mind plane. She stands up in shock, citing her doubts, since even Siegfried couldn't do it until he was 30. So how can Giamma do it at only 17? Who agrees with her as well, but notes that he might have some way to bridge the gap in his experience. Medea sits back down in shock and defeat. A bit before, when she stopped the fight, she rushed to Giamma to check up on him. But in that moment, Medea felt her dignity as a 7-star and a mentor vanish. What she felt towards Giamma was fear. It reminded her of the first time she faced Basom, the 6th Legion commander. She don't know why she felt that from Giamma. It got her wondering if he is really like a demon, like his name. Seeing Siegfried, she don't think that he is lying. So she asks if he lost. But it makes him furious, yelling absolutely not. Even if Giamma is gifted, he is no match for him, and he didn't even have his armament. Medea teases him for getting too defensive. Also, he is the one who always used to say that a true master never blames their tools. And now he is making an excuse himself that he didn't have his armament, which is embarrassing. Siegfried gets pissed and calls her an old hag, only for her to respond with a whack on his head. He tries to reply with activation of his blessing, but gets a hit again instead. We now see visions of Giamma and Siegfried clashing their blades, only for Giamma to wake up again, thinking that it turned out fine in the end. But if Medea didn't intervene, it could have been disastrous. He also realizes that he was able to enter the mind plane, which felt surreal to him. It's a domain that can only be accessed when certain conditions like mastery and comprehension of one's armament is fulfilled. It is said that only those who devoted their entire lives to a single weapon to perfect can enter this place. So there are fewer than 10 heroes who can freely traverse in this space. Even Leon took 3 years of mentoring from the Blade Emperor to even step a foot in it. So he don't understand why is it possible for him. It took Leon 3 years with all of his main character buffs. He suddenly realizes the reason: sashimi knives, including his past lives. He has accumulated over 2 decades of experience. What's more, whenever he activates his blessing, his focus transcends the limits of comprehension. The threads of his current and past lives are weaving together seamlessly, unraveling the obstacles he is facing. And basing on what he has experienced so far, running from the problems seems to make them worse. So instead, he would take one step at a time to see what he can do. He gets up, planning to enter the mind plane. If he can do that, he would be able to train in combat without activating his blessing. He starts focusing, and the world around him starts to turn into blur. The plane breaks, and a demonic hand reaches from above. The world around him shatters, and a demonic hand reaches from above. And when he looks down, the knife itself disappears into dust, leaving him to realize something. We now switch scenes to Elder Claudia getting scolded for crossing a line, who argues that everyone agreed to it. They are annoyed at him for sending out a demon kin, but one of them tries to emphasize to investigate the top-scoring special entrant, Giamma Kong. One of them questions if he can be hero, which was already determined to be Leon. Elder Claudia calls Leon a half-baked novice who still haven't manifested his blessing. But he is more concerned about Giamma, who slaughtered the genius twins, and even Medea has kept his information confidential. But regardless, they want to dispose of the hero, and notes that even the Blade Emperor is in the school right now. Ever since Medea took over the office as the academy director, their influence has dwindled drastically. And after Basman's defeat, everyone is revering the 7 stars, while they are treated like forgotten relics, believing that the treatment is going to get worse with the emergence of the hero. So they agree that they need a common enemy to maintain their power, and the hero who poses a threat to the Demon King must be eliminated. But Elder Claudia is annoyed that he has to go this far to persuade the council just due to one woman. But if they don't act, death would be merciful fate for them. One of them speaks up to issue their commands. The auditores would see to it. We now switch to Giamma again and see his annoyed expression. The blacksmith seems to be terrified of him, pleading to spare him while we see a sashimi version of Murasame. And Giamma seems to have his blessing activated. The blacksmith tries to explain that it has never happened to him in 30 years of his career. It was almost as if the blade itself refused to be forged. So he quickly melted the iron and reforged it, barely managing to salvage its shape. In the hands of some lesser smith, it would be a useless scrap. And it even snapped with a single strike. With 20 years of his experience in using knives, Giamma can tell that the blade was forged with great skill, but it just had to be the perfect match for his blessing, and its durability is only grade E. But the blacksmith explains that his blade has a high potential, and if he would bring him materials, he would refine his blade at no cost. Giamma angrily asks, what if he breaks it again? But the guy tries to explain that even if it's only E grade right now, it could reach a tier or even beyond with its potential, and there are materials which would make sure that reforging doesn't fail. But the tricky part is that those materials can only be found from a tier demonic monster or stronger. Giamma notes that an A-tier monster is as strong as an E-tier demonkin, meaning he would have to defeat another mermaid-level foe. He don't plan to risk his life for upgrading weapon. He can still get materials from weaker monsters. It made him wish if he could just swipe his credit card and be done with it. He tells the blacksmith to keep his word, and he assures him of it. Giamma also asks for half the cost of leftover metal from forging, 10 million won. But the blacksmith isn't too keen on doing it, arguing that he did what he asked and didn't even charge for it. Giamma estimates the 10 million should be enough for a B-tier broken sword according to the current market rates. The blacksmith gets pissed and warns Giamma to not pull a fast one on him. But Giamma threatens him back in response, that he was just planning to find out how this weapon performs. The blacksmith quickly apologizes and offers 5 million won instead. Giamma still sticks to 10. He then offers 8 million, but Giamma simply takes out his knife. The guy swears that the actual market price is different and he won't recover the cost. But Giamma simply tells him to hand it over. And the blacksmith finally gives up. A bit later, after his armament grade increased, he unlocked another feature. The biggest thing keeping him from using his blessing was pain, but if that is being lessened, he planned to get this stat higher. And after reading it, he also put it to the test. The pain went from feeling like dying to being barely able to breathe. But even just one level made such difference, so one day, he hopes to not use his blessing painlessness to use it. And his armament grade only increases when he gets a new weapon or when he upgrades one. And now that the midterms are over, he makes upgrading his top priority, believing that if he keeps improving little by little, he would finally understand his power perhaps, and even find out who sent him into this world. And just then, Chloe arrives. He greets her back. She asks if something is wrong with his food, and he replies that he just lost his appetite, and asks about his cast, if she is feeling better. She does still need a crutch, but she feels stronger than before. She apparently heard that bones grow stronger after breaking once. Only for Giamma to think of it as weird, since she is thinking of bones as of muscles. He suddenly gets up and picks up a piece of rice from her mouth, leading her to blush heavily and lose her balance. But he picks her up again, and she notices his new weapon, and compliments it as amazing. But while she is picking it up, Giamma is nervous, wishing that it don't flip her switch on. But she calls it pretty and how it doesn't look like an E-tier at all. Giamma swoops down hearing that, and she quickly reaffirms him that she didn't mean it that way, only that it looks great even for the lowest tier. He replies that it's fine, as he even got some of his money back, and he promised him free upgrades as long as he can bring him materials. Chloe is excited to hear that, commending that he is going to be on another level with a proper armament, seeing how strong he is with a dollar store knife, and he thanks her for the compliment. And when he really thinks about it, he doesn't see any reason to get any stronger if he can defeat a mermaid. The only reason he is upgrading his weapon is to lessen the pain from his blessing. Seeing him sigh, Chloe apologizes for her rudeness, but Giamma assures her that it's not like that. It's just he couldn't help but sigh seeing the state of his Murasame. Chloe suddenly starts to have her switch on, stating that she would kill everyone who is causing him trouble. But Giamma taps on her shoulder and brings her back. Suddenly, he notices something, realizing that Chloe didn't sense that. He starts walking up to a tree and Chloe asks, "Where is he going?" He kicks the tree and Nox falls down. As he questions him, what is he doing? Who simply clicks his tongue, thinking that he let his guard down, and Chloe seems surprised upon seeing him. A bit later, both of them gets back to the bench, and Chloe hides behind him like a fox. Giamma notes that he don't smell any blood on him, so he must be unarmed. When asked, what does he want, Nox stays silent for a bit. Giamma continues that he made himself clear last time, but Nox assures that it's not why he is here. So he once again asks him, why is he here, and he replies, since he would find out anyways if he tells Chloe, so he might as well tell them both right now. And it's something that concerns Giamma as well. The Academy's Council of Elders have put a bounty on him to kill him. Giamma is surprised to learn that those old men wants him dead. Chloe shouts at him, questioning if this is the reason for why he is here. Nox replies that her senses have dulled from being away from home. Chloe tells Giamma to get behind him while she gets ready to fight, though she is too far away herself, prompting Nox to say, never mind, she is still sharp as ever. He continues to tell Giamma that the Council of Elders seems fixated on him oddly. The Auditora family finds this order questionable, so they are putting an hold to it. The council is secretly acting without the director's knowledge is one thing, but targeting a mere student also goes against their principle. But since the order comes directly from the council, they cannot simply ignore it. If they pushing them, they would have no choice but to investigate him. But since Chloe is still one of them, he felt that she should know. Giamma notes that Nox is using his family's principle as an excuse. He was actually just worried about Chloe. With that, he starts to leave, only for Giamma to call him out. He wanted to talk about that other day, but he tells Giamma that Chloe seems the happiest when she is with him. And even as her brother, he has never seen her like this, much to Giamma's confusion. As such, Nox tells him to not ever let her get hurt again. But Giamma doesn't understand what is he talking about, as he is not the one who hurt her. But he still reluctantly agrees to it. But Nox still has one question for him. How is he so strong? But Giamma doesn't consider himself strong. He believes you call people that who always stand their ground, while he can only manage for less than a minute each day, but he cannot tell him that. But even though Nox used Chloe as an excuse, he still shared a family secret with him, so he doesn't feel right to just ignore his question. And so, he simply tells Nox that he don't have enough hunger, who doesn't understand what he means. Giamma explains that there is something he can only get from real-world experience. If he stays in the academy, he would hit a wall sooner or later, so he should work hard and push himself. Nox still don't get what he is trying to say, but Giamma thinks it's time to dip, even though what he said wasn't entirely untrue. We fast forward to classes, where the professor is explaining how once the divine realm thrived with countless gods, who ruled over all, upholding the peace and prosperity, however. But Giamma doesn't listen to all this important shit, and is focused on the elders targeting him. He remembers that they are descendants of 5 of the 7 disciples of Valor Joaquin. They are a powerful group, not just in the academy, but in the society as well. But since they kept getting in the way of the protagonist, the players started calling them the Corrupt 5. So, he don't understand why he became a problem for them. And like that, he writes some of possible reason in his notebook, realizing that he has caused quite a mess, practically begging for everyone's attention. But even then it still doesn't make sense to him on why the elders want him gone. He recalls about the incident, knowing that he is not their target but Leon is. He was the outlier who ruined their plan. And no matter how much Medea would have tried to hide it, the elders would have gotten to know that he was the one who slayed the mermaid. And if they are after Leon, there is a possibility that one of them or even all of them are colluding with demons. They are not just trying to stop him, but want blood, all of it against a mere student. He finds it insane that they are putting the whole humanity at risk for their own privilege. He wants to go and carve them up right now, but now is not the time. But when the time comes, he is determined to cut them down. Professor tells them all to write it down, but Giamma is not able to focus. He now plans to upgrade his armament, for which he has to raid a dungeon, but he would need a party for that. Chloe would join if he asks. But he prefers someone more strategic than a powerhouse like Rachel. Meanwhile, the professor is telling all the students what are those gods called. While Giamma realizes who he needs in his party, Speed Weapon, he plans to ask him for help. The professor takes the name, but it's censored for us. Now a bit later, at the dragon class, we see a big guy threatening Giamma that this isn't a place for gutter rats like him. Only for Giamma to wonder, who is this chump? He has dealt with drunkards all his life in his restaurant, so a teenage tantrum like him is not worth his time. So he tells him to scram, otherwise he would restructure his square jaw. The guy gets pissed and plans to hit Giamma, who notes that he is quite slow, but he suddenly gets surprised in the next moment, as we see Weapon is here and hits the guy right in the face. Everyone wonders what is going on seeing the commotion, while Weapon has his hand hurt from hitting the guy's chin. Giamma smiles seeing him hit the guy like that, while Weapon thinks that he hit the guy too hard instead. He already knows that Giamma is here for him and suggests to go outside for talk. A bit later, they finished up their talk. Weapon summarizes that he basically needs a party as soon as possible, and he wants him to help him find the members, and the team gets his share of dungeon spoils, while he only wants the monster materials. Giamma explains that if he were to put up a party, only Chloe would join, so he figured things would go a lot smoother if he helped since he is in the dragon class. Weapon notes that he would need at least 4 people to get a clearance for a raid, and if not for the Academy's regulations, he believed Giamma could solo dozens of dungeons. But he replies that he couldn't even do one alone. But Weapon doesn't believe it, especially after seeing him take down a mermaid alone, commenting that being too humble would make him insufferable. Regardless, he is glad to see him fully recovered, and he replies that he bounced back after a couple of days in a comfy hospital. Weapon agrees to join him. He has no reason to say no and believes he would again get an interesting experience if he joins up with him. Giamma thanks him for it, and Weapon asks if he has some dungeon in mind, and he replies, the Buffalo Dungeon, C tier. Weapon calls it a classic pick and counts that Chloe, him, and Giamma would make it 3, and asks if he has any specific member in mind for the last one. Giamma replies, anyone but Leon or Rachel preferably. Weapon chuckles, saying that he couldn't get them to join anyways. Explaining that Rachel is holed up in the training hall of the school since he was hospitalized, and Leon is busy prepping for a high-level dungeon raid with the 2nd and 3rd years. Hearing which relieves him, while Weapon tries to think of another member. He suddenly gets someone in mind, but she should be asleep right now. Giamma asks, at this time of the day, and he replies that she got her quirks. But before going to her first, he asks him to stop by the shop first to buy something. Looking around, Giamma notes that he didn't know there was a place like this in the academy. Even when he played the game, he never visited this place. Even though he is a chef trained in Japanese cuisine, he never went to Japan himself. He always wanted to visit for market research, so it's the closest he ever got to it. He notices lots of archery practice boards, and Weapon finds the girl they are looking for. He tries to wake her up, but there is no response. So he leans in and whispers in her ear that he got her some. She quickly gets up, asking where is it. And Weapon points it towards Giamma, that he has it, and she immediately rushes towards him. She quickly snatches the bag from his hands and rolls over in midair, much to Giamma's surprise. They both fall down on the floor, with the girl eating the snack excitedly while laying on top of Giamma. Giamma doesn't understand what just happened while she calls him out, asking if he got any more jelly bars. We go back to some time in the past. Giamma excitedly yells, shocking his co-workers. He was surrounded by dudes in both game and real life, but now he spent some money to finally get her. Abel, the reason why he swiped his credit card. But when his card opens, he instead gets Ryojo Saki, much to his disappointment. In this game, the MC is surrounded by a cast of beautiful heroines. Among them, Abel was chosen as the main heroine by the creators. Although every single heroine had their own charms and abilities, the story still revolved around Abel and Leon, overcoming hardships together and slowly falling in love. Even Giamma was so drawn to her charm that he couldn't help but spend money to get her. And as a result, everyone else faded into background. And among the losing heroines, there was one character who fell into irrelevance faster than anyone else. It was his first 5-star character, Ryojo Saki, the daughter of the broken bow. When Giamma is unable to reply to her comment, she calls him slow. Giamma knows that she is one of the strongest ranged characters, and also quite smart as well. More importantly, she doesn't play any major role in the story, so having her in their party wouldn't cause any major problems. Or at least he thinks so, hoping that it would be fine. Saki questions Weapon his reason for being here. He hands her over a jelly bar, so she allows him to talk. He asks if she knows Giamma, which she does, so Weapon starts his story how he came looking for him today. And then some punk started giving him some trouble. Saki asks him to get to the point. So Weapon simply reveals that they are forming a party to raid the Buffalo Dungeon next week. His explanation was something even Giamma found quite weird. Weapon continues that Giamma is leaving them with all the rewards except the buffalo horns. She approaches him and confirms if he was the guy who fought in that subspace duel, which he affirms. She simply stares at him for a moment, and Giamma looks confused. She answers that dungeon rewards do count towards their grade, so she don't want to refuse, but she finds Giamma looking like a slacker, who finds it rich coming from someone who was just sleeping. As such, Saki declines to team up with someone who isn't going to put in any effort. Weapon tries to argue that he is really strong, but Saki assumes that his opponent was just weak. Weapon again tries to argue, and is about to reveal the mermaid incident, but stops in the middle, and asks her to just listen to him. Regardless, their bickering goes on, leaving Giamma quite confused at their actions. While she would be good for their party, He doesn't like her attitude and he don't plan to grovel for her to join. So he starts to leave, telling Weapon that they would find someone better. Saki comments that the dungeon must not be important to him then. Giamma suddenly stops and starts to take out his knives, much to both of their shock. He throws it towards the target and hits right in the middle without even looking. Saki seems quite surprised seeing this. But there is more, as he throws a second knife which lands right on top of the first one. He asks her if she wants to see more, but in complete daze by his prowess, she stutteringly declines. Now next day, everyone arrives for the meeting, with Saki coming in early and greeting everyone. Their gazes meet, and she nervously greets Giamma as well, who realizes his knives yesterday must have had an effect on her. Weapon is surprised to see that Saki already set up everything. With this, they begin their meeting. The dungeon they are going to is home to the C-rank demonic monsters, Buffalo. They attack by charging from a distance, making close combat tricky, but they are helpless against ranged attacks. But there is one thing they have to avoid at all costs: the stone gate at the dungeon's center, which has to remain shut. Chloe asks on what would happen if they were to open. Weapon, while not sure, replies that it's said to be some kind of seal. Saki informs that even the academy rules out on opening that gate. Giamma also tells everyone that they have to make sure to stay away from that no matter what. Hearing which, everyone starts to stare at him. Weapon asks if he knows what is in there, but Giamma denies even while knowing what is actually in it. They all thought he might knew something from the way he spoke. Giamma knows that it can only be opened under specific conditions. Right now, it's system locked. Aside from that small risk, the dungeon has the best return for their effort. Saki thought that Giamma was staring at her and asks about it. He replies that she must really like those jelly bars, which she does since she gotta have this much sugar since she uses her brain this much. But only if she kept quiet, Giamma would like it more. Suddenly, he feels something and looks around, noting that he is being watched right now. Chloe asks if something is up, judging from his expression. Giamma stays silent, planning to wait, being sure that they would show themselves to him when it's time. We now move to Gangwon Province, Chorwon, a place Giamma swore never to step foot again after his military service. They finally arrive. The guard stops the bus for a moment, but upon realizing that it's Joaquin Academy, he quickly removes the barricades. Civilians aren't allowed here because of the dungeons, while Giamma is being watched by the Elder Council. Weapon comes around and offers him a boiled egg. It's supposedly a tradition of Koreans to have them while traveling, but Giamma declines, wondering if people still do that in this age. Seeing his stiff expression, Weapon asks him to chill since it's only a C-tier dungeon. He then goes to ask Saki if she wants some boiled eggs, and she also declines, and eyes Giamma, who notices and looks back. But when their gazes meet, she quickly turns her head away to the window. The elders are already watching him, so Giamma would feel better if she could stop eyeing him already. They finally arrive at the location. This place is where monsters supposedly made home since ancient times, but now it's just a dungeon for easy reward. Weapon asks Giamma what does he have in his bag, which turns out to be a bunch of kitchen knives, prompting Weapon to ask if he is going to open a knife shop or something, but Giamma believes it's better to be safe than sorry. Weapon finds to be an old man's reason. Regardless, he does believe he bought it for a good reason. Chloe decides to leave the way since she is the vanguard, and they all head towards the dungeon. Arriving there, the guard quickly takes notice of them. They are asked to write their names in the logbooks, which they quickly do. But when Giamma looks up while writing his name, the guard nervously flinches. Weapon asks him to keep on heading inside, and they finally enters the dungeon. Giamma notices their flinching and hopes nothing bad happens now. As they start to head inside, he starts to notice some names and love signs in the dungeon, much to his embarrassment. Suddenly, Saki grabs Giamma's clothes, citing that she is exhausted. Giamma could clearly see that. She asks for something sweet to help herself, and Giamma ruffles his jacket and takes out a piece of candy. She isn't much impressed. Candies aren't her things, so she asks for jelly bars instead. But Giamma argues that he isn't her snack bar, and he is sure that she brought her own, which she is saving for later. Though she does end up taking the candy regardless. Chloe suddenly warns everyone of 4 upcoming monsters. Weapon tells them to stick to the plan. He plans to give both of them buff, so they can go ham on it. Saki quickly takes out her beautiful bow. He recognizes it as the S-tier armament, vermilion bow, which would make the dungeon a walk in the park. But it feels stiff to her, making Giamma worry if it's going to be alright with her. She tells them to wait 1 second and takes out her jelly bar to eat. Giamma starts to have even more doubts at this point. Regardless, the monsters are here and Weapon quickly buffs both of them. Chloe rushes in first to attack with dual crossbows and strikes them right in the eye. 3 monsters still remain and charges in. She plans to draw her blade this time to try and slow them down, but Weapon advises against it since it's against the plan. Suddenly, Saki steps in front and shoots 3 arrows, all of them perfectly hitting their marks and easily destroying all of Buffalo's in 1 hit. She acts all smug about destroying all of them, though Giamma notes that she ended up destroying the horns as well. But regardless, he found it perfect, remembering a calling that a skill-ranged fighter is unstoppable, but his upgrade materials are a lost cause. Suddenly, one of the monster gets back up again to attack her. She seems quite calm about it. But while preparing to counter, she ends up tripping instead. But someone comes forward to save her as she opens her eyes to look. The monster is already slain by Giamma. He asks if she is doing good, and she simply blushes in return. Meanwhile, the guard outside seemingly gets a call from someone. A bit later, Giamma starts collecting their horns, finally getting the thing he came to the dungeon for. He plans to take as many as he can carry. Saki approaches him and thanks him with a jelly bar. Seeing which, Chloe starts to get angry. He calls her out for something, and she quickly gets to her sweet side again. It's something about the staff before they came in. Seeing them two whisper to each other like that, Weapon assumes they are dating, making Chloe blush heavy. But Giamma denies that rumor, calling out Weapon for assuming all relationship between a guy and girl to be of dating. But Weapon only said that because they are always together, and Giamma's words doesn't sit much right with Chloe either. Regardless, she asks if it's normal for only a few monsters to be here. Weapon and Saki finds it weird as well, with the latter finding the behavior of buffaloes different from usual as well. To her, it looked like as if they were running away from something, which isn't right seeing how they typically behave. Weapon agrees, since they are usually docile, even used to plow field here in Chorwin, which Giamma finds quite weird to imagine. But even so, they think it's probably not that important and decides to move on. On the way, Giamma asks Weapon on him and Saki met. She explains that she came in first, and he came in second in written exam and threw a huge fit. She also came in third for the class placement exams. Giamma calls Weapon impressive for that since he always thought he was just some guy with connections, but he reveals that Rachel is actually his distant relative. Giamma realizes the reason he didn't knew him from the game, even though he is tied with so many characters. His family is the branch family of Spear Saints. He wanted to explain something further, but stops in the middle. Seeing Giamma look at him like that, he assures him that he is fine where he is. Rather, he wants Giamma to always remember him even after he becomes famous. But he believes he is never going to be famous. Weapon and Chloe thinks otherwise, commenting that he would even become one of the 7 stars someday. Saki, who is walking forward, suddenly stops hearing that and reveals that she hates the 7 stars, leaving Weapon and everyone else confused. Regardless, they decide to move forward to quickly clear the dungeon, which would happen after defeating 20 monsters. But Giamma notices some purple glowing marks on the ground. Weapon calls him out to let's go, and he ignores it and leaves with them. Switching scenes to outside, the guard informs the pre-praetor that the students should have encountered the frenzy buffalo by the magic stone. They don't have high hopes, and asks about the other task. He did that as well, but he believes that enraged buffalo should be enough to take care of them. It's instructor Kim, who asks the guard to tone down his confidence, because he is going to answer if this fails. Regardless, he believes he is screwed either ways. He forced open that gate just to be safe, so he finds it impossible for them to survive, though he did felt as if Giamma saw right through him. Back to Giamma and everyone, Chloe informs him about the enemies approaching them, and about 50 of them at that. They all then suddenly feels the ground rumbling, and we see a huge horde of buffaloes are approaching them at high speeds, leaving all of them shocked. They all seems to be enraged as well, Weapon though they were supposed to be docile. Seeing a stampede charging in towards them, he thinks to take out his knife, but suddenly remembers a hearing that every knife has a purpose. It was his master, who instructed how a sashimi knife is designed to slice a fish, but Giamma argues about sashimi steak, since it would like using a sashimi knife on a cow. His master angrily brings the knife down on the board, leaving him scared for a moment. But he doesn't find Giamma to be wrong about that. As such, Giamma is about to butcher some cows with his sashimi knife this time. He asks Chloe to draw their attention. She don't need to attack, but only distract them a little. For weapon, he tells him that he must already know what to do, which he does indeed. Saki is confused seeing Giamma so calm despite there being 50 buffaloes in front of him. He then asks her to take care of the ones that gets too close, which she agrees. She tries to ask Weapon on why is Giamma so calm, who tells her to not be too surprised from what she is about to see, who looks ahead in confusion. For Giamma, it doesn't matter if he is using sashimi knives against buffaloes, because today he plans to cut down every single buffalo in front of him as he activates his blessing. He quickly throws the knives towards the charging buffaloes. And seeing him fight, Saki's expression changes to that of absolute shock. Saki ends up dropping her jelly bar in shock, calling it impossible on what she just witnessed. And we see Giamma standing over a bunch of buffalo corpses. It was just a fleeting moment. Chloe used her blessing to attack the buffaloes to distract them. Meanwhile, Giamma was using his throwing knives like the yellow flash, using it to cut down the monsters quickly. He goes on to slaughter all of them effortlessly. One of them charges straight in, blowing rubble on his face. Taking the opportunity, all of the monsters jump him, completely enveloping him with their bodies. Saki readies her bow to shoot, believing it's too many of them, only to get absolutely shocked the next moment. He easily dispatches all of them, cutting them into pieces without a single scratch on himself. She finds it hard to believe what she just witnessed as Giamma stands in the center of all the corpses. And quickly enough, he gets back to collecting horns like a normal person. His blessing duration increased to 40 seconds, which made killing 50 buffaloes light work. He found his party to be of huge help as well, even patting Chloe for doing great work. Meanwhile, Saki is still in shock, not even knowing what to say. A smug weapon reminds her that he told her to not be too surprised, which annoys her, since how is she not supposed to be shocked by that? Weapon replies that he was also left speechless when he first saw him. He is someone who always manages to pull off the impossible. They both wonder just who is Giamma. Weapon calls him some kind of legendary champion or something, and starts to walk away, leaving Saki wondering, just what is he talking about? They keep on heading inside, and Weapon expresses that he felt not doing enough since he took out more than double the required buffalo alone to clear the dungeon, but Giamma calls it fine since he didn't do much during midterms. Weapon again almost lets it slip out that he defeated Mermaid, but stops seeing Saki around. Regardless, they almost didn't made it out alive, and Saki wonders if these buffaloes were being chased by something as well. Chloe tries to ask Giamma, where are they? And right as Saki notices the pillars, a door behind them closes. They are in front of a chain door, and Giamma immediately recognizes for what it is. Back to the guard, he is shocked that they killed all the buffaloes. He is in 2 million debt due to the casino, and once a woman claiming to be instructor from Joaquin approached him about it. She offered to clear it for him in return for a favor, asking him to tame the buffaloes and drive them berserk, and a student named Giamma enters. He is to set them loose, and also to open the stone gate in the inner depths. He hesitates, so Kim decides to find someone else. Hearing which, he quickly accepts the job. Back to the present, he believes it's fine since they are a bunch of kids, calling it impossible for them to survive now anyways. Back to Giamma and all, they realize that they walked through the gate, without even realizing it. He knew that suspicious look was a bad omen. The gate only opens with the Gigant's Mana Stone, a rare drop from the boss monster of Gigant Dungeon only accessible after mid-game. The fragments he saw earlier were the pieces of that Mana Stone. He thinks about the reward for a second, but quickly forgets since it's no time for that. He can see a red line across the stone gate, a surface no blade should be able to scratch, but he already used all 42nd of his blessing, but he should be able to pull through for a moment with his blessing of painlessness. So he plans to cut it open and escape before the monster awakens. But suddenly, they hear a large boom, leaving them all to wonder, just what the hell is that? In front of them, there are 3 monsters, one boss monster along with 2 of his underlings. Seeing even his underlings to be here, Giamma gets worried. Even if he cuts down the gate now and bolts, the monsters would catch up to them and won't let them leave alive. But it's still not like the midterms. He knew nothing about the mermaids. But he has beaten Minotauros in game before. At his best, he could take on all three at once. But he already used his blessing. So he wants to maximize his chances of winning. He asks Weapon to cast a blessing to reduce pain, which he can up till 2 minutes. Giamma calls it enough. He asks him to not stop even for a second. Otherwise, he would end up dead, and Weapon assures him. Meanwhile, he leaves the underlings to Chloe and Saki. And since the big one is dangerous, he asks them to not engage. The Minotaur screams, and Giamma activates his blessing. Immediately after, he is met with a sharp pain all over his body. His hand starts to tremble. But with Weapon's blessing, he is able to move forcefully. The monster charges in, and so does Giamma. Their fight begins, with Giamma hurting so bad that he is coughing up blood. He tries to get behind the monster, but it reacts and kicks him, which he blocks. But now, without the blessing of painlessness numbing him, he actually starts to feel much more free. The whole ground rumbles from that downward strike from the monster, but much to his surprise, Giamma is still fine and is on top of his axe. Saki, who is watching his battle as well, wonders if Giamma is even human. Muscle control, posture, movement, all working in sync, using potential energy to break the enemy's balance with minimal movement. This all might seem straightforward in theory. Pulling them off is an entirely different challenge. And yet he is remaining unfazed with death breathing down his neck. Now getting annoyed with the underling blocking her view, she shoots its head off. Watching him fight is like watching Siegfried fight for her. From which, she remembers the rumor that the Blade Emperor unleashed his aura against a special entrant, and realizes that it's Giamma. Suddenly, the air around Giamma starts to rumble, and the monster notices the danger and quickly tries to attack him, only for Giamma to split his arm in half while it screams in pain. We see Chloe, who has also finished her job of slaying the underling. For her, she still hasn't gotten the hang of fighting against monsters yet. The closer a monster resembles a human, the deadlier it tends to be. She then looks towards Giamma, who is still fighting. It brings up its axe again and starts charging up for an attack. Saki and everyone notes it's using magic, much to their shock. But it's burning through its own life to manifest it, a mere monster. She isn't even able to get close due to the magic running wild, and yet Giamma is still standing in front. Weapon, while he is nervous as well, puts all of his trust in him as well. The axe starts to fuse with the Minotauros' arm, while Giamma starts to spill more and more blood from his mouth. And after a short moment, the Minotaur swings down his axe on him, trying to kill him with his supposed last attack. Giamma strikes as well, and both of their attacks clashes. But the magic is too dense for him to cut through, and he cannot step aside either. The Minotaur starts to push him back, only for it to get hit by an arrow right in the eye by Saki, who asks Giamma to go ahead and do it. So he closes his eyes for a second, and finally sees a thread. His blessing tells him to slash. And he starts to cut through with his knife, starting to glow blue. Chloe notices the blue light, as well while Giamma starts to slice through the Minotaur's huge axe. He finally pushes through and splits the Minotaur in half, leaving everyone quite shocked. He is finally left relieved after defeating the monster, as Saki watches him in awe. Weapon drops on the ground, as well as the stress leaves his body, and calls out Giamma for always pulling off the impossible. He also noticed the blue light that lit up the cave. It was aura, which Giamma managed to manifest at the same age as him, which was shocking to him. Saki comes around and tells Weapon to breathe. He asks, what is up with her? And she replies that she got what he meant earlier. Watching Giamma is like watching a legend unfold live. She can understand why he is following him around everywhere. Weapon denies that, but regardless, she confirms if Giamma cannot be promoted to a higher class this year, which indeed he cannot. So she decides to do the opposite instead since there are no rules against it, because she would like to be around him as well. Even with Weapon's blessing, Giamma would likely take a while to recover from this, though it could have gone much worse. Chloe quickly rushes towards him and hugs him tightly out of worry. The sudden hug hurt him, so she quickly gets back and apologizes. Giamma then gets a notification that he has received a new blessing. It was something reserved for the protagonist of the story, a spirit tier blessing, among the rarest in the world. It reveals its true potential when paired with another, This blessing is basically a requirement if you want to wield the bomb on. And just as he is getting up, the door to the cave opens, and he asks Chloe to do what he asked her of before. It's the security guard, who is quickly pinned down by Chloe. She orders him to stay put. Weapon and Saki wonder what is going on, and Giamma replies that he asked Chloe to do him a favor. The guard feigns ignorance about the whole incident, and Giamma replies that they are about to find out what he did. Saki and Weapon both realize that all the strange incident in the dungeon was due to this guy. She already found it strange that there are no cameras in the dungeon and the guy appeared right on cue. Weapon questions the reason on why would he do such thing, and Saki replies it's what they need to find out. She is sure that he alone cannot pull this off and asks him to tell them on who gave him this order. He hesitates in replying, and Saki decides to fix his mood to allow him to talk. Giamma gives him a sharp glare, making him scared. He quickly folds and reveals about the female instructor who approached him and offered to help with his gambling debt in return. Weapon is furious that he tried to kill them over a bit of money, but he cites that it was quite a lot that he got offered. Saki asks for how the instructor looks, and he replies that she had violet hair and eyes and was on the taller side. She quickly remembers as their class's assistant teacher. Weapon questions, what if she was also the one behind the midterm incident? Saki asks on what happened that time, and Giamma replies that they ran into a mermaid during the exam. She is surprised to learn that, and since the embargo is lifted, Weapon reveals that Giamma alone defeated that mermaid as well. And now, they got everything they need from him. Saki and Weapon realizes what comes next as Chloe pulls out her sword from the guy's leg. Now conveniently, a dungeon that should have stayed sealed opened up, so it's easy to make someone disappear in it. The guy starts to get scared, and Giamma leaves the judgment to Chloe. And she quickly dispatches the guy for his crimes. They start to leave the dungeon, while Giamma makes a statement that whoever comes for him, the elders, instructors, or anyone who dares to bring harm to him, he will cut them down himself.